Chapter 1255. Meng Wanwan's face turned pale. No one dared to make a sound when they saw the terrifying atmosphere. Do you need me to teach you how to shut up? Bei Yunji's eyes flashed with irritation and anger. He smiled impatiently. Meng Wanwan was speechless. She could only nod stiffly with a pale face. Bei Yunji glanced at her and then let go of her hand. He turned around and continued to read the papers as if nothing had happened. Meng Wanwan, on the other hand, felt weak all over and was a little scared. It was only then that she suddenly realized that Bei Yunji was a dangerous existence not to be trifled with. Seeing Bei Yunji reading, the rest of the people did not dare to breathe loudly, afraid that they would disturb the big boss from reading. Bei Yunji's group work went very smoothly. Although Meng Wanwan hated Bei Yunji to the core, she was indeed afraid of Bei Yunji. On the day of the big homework report, it was Meng Wanwan's turn to report on behalf of the group. Su Xianing asked Bei Yunji, who was next to her, "Is your group ready?" Bei Yunji replied, "Yes." Su Xianing was curious why Bei Yunji was not nervous. "Do you think your group will be able to do it?" Bei Yunji said concisely, "No." Su Xianing was speechless. "Then why are you sitting there calmly with a lollipop in your mouth and watching the fire burn across the river? It's as if you're not burning your own house." "Bei Yunji, if you fail the big homework twice you'll have to repeat the year. You know this, right?" Su Xianing was puzzled. Why was Bei Yunji not worried at all? If the top scholar of the college entrance examination were to repeat the year, she would definitely become the laughingstock of Yin University. Bei Yunji asked casually, "Didn't you say that as long as my personal results are good enough, I won't fail? Do you still intend to get full marks for your personal homework?" Bei Yunji looked at her and asked, "No?" Su Xianing was speechless. She felt that there was no way she could communicate with Bei Yunji normally. She was speechless. Professor Huang was very strict in his grading. The highest score for his students was slightly over 90. How could she ask Professor Huang to give her full marks? After Meng Wanwan finished her report, when it came to Huang Zui's comments, Meng Wanwan's eyes were filled with caution and anticipation. She didn't think that Bei Yunji could pass the first draft without her help. Who knew? Huang Zui's eyes darkened. He looked much worse than when he reported to the previous groups. Suddenly Huang Zui turned to look at the back row and asked with a sneer, "That's the standard of the big assignment. Someone still has the nerve to eat a lollipop?" Pei Chen paused with the candy in his mouth. At this time the others were laughing at him. Meng Wanwan's face was also red. "When some people made their proposals they told me all sorts of things, but what did they actually hand over? Do you think the trash is valuable?" Every word that Huang Zui said was like a slap to the faces of the other members of Bei Yunji. Bei Yunji had asked them to change all the content, but they didn't think it was necessary to be so competitive, so they stood on Meng Wanwan's side. "If you hand in this kind of trash again your entire group can leave the laboratory together." Huang Zui was expressionless. Next group. Hearing this, Meng Wanwan's face turned pale and her eyes slowly turned red. She felt that she had lost a lot of face. She ran off the stage, quickly wiped away her tears and sat down with her head lowered. Su Xianing turned her head and realized that the big boss beside her wasn't sad at all. He even put his hands in his pockets and continued to watch the show. It was as if she wasn't the one being scolded. His attitude was really good. In the end, the big assignment report ended. Their group realized that Huang Zui had only given Bei Yunji a passing grade. Chapter 1256. The expressions of the team members changed slightly, but after seeing the division of labor, they understood why Bei Yunji was the only one who had passed. Bei Yunji was the one who had drafted the topic report, but because of the poor performance of the entire team, Bei Yunji had only passed. However, Meng Wanwan threw a tantrum. Her eyes were red and she couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Wouldn't it have been better if you had told us earlier to please Professor Huang? She's the only one who has passed in the entire team. Is she happy?" After that, Meng Wanwan ran out and squatted in the empty corridor, crying. She didn't think that she was worse than Bei Yunji, but Bei Yunji was popular and even Professor Huang favored her. At the same time, the others also had mixed feelings, but they didn't think that Bei Yunji had pleased Huang Zui. If Huang Zui was so easy to please, he wouldn't be the famous devil professor of Yin University. At this moment, Bei Yunji was called to the office by Huang Zui. Before Bei Yunji could speak, she heard Huang Zui ask slowly, "You have such a good temper?" Bei Yunji. Huang Zui looked at Bei Yunji's personal file on the computer and sighed. "You're so good at fighting. How can the other members of the team not listen to you?" This was the first time he had seen such a special personal file in Yin University. The girl looked pale and thin and had even been to the police station for fighting. Bei Yunji's eyelids twitched when she saw Huang Zui looking at her bad record. She licked her lips again. We have to give others a chance when it comes to group work. Don't think that I don't know the situation in your team. Huang Zui slowly picked up his teacup. If Meng Wenwen was a male student, her head would have been smashed by you. I didn't expect you to be so protective of the fairer sex. Bei Yunj, but today Meng Wenwen mentioned to me that Su Xianing will be transferred to your team. What do you think? Huang Zui asked. Bei Yunj replied, okay. Then you'll be the team leader in the future. If they still don't listen to you, tell them to come to me. After Huang Zui finished speaking, he suddenly changed the topic. He handed an application form to Bei Yunj and asked patiently, by the way, do you want to come to my laboratory? My lab is quite fun. Occasionally, I don't have to take an exam. All right. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows. I'll think about it. Before Huang Zui could rejoice, he was choked by the second half of Bei Yunj's sentence. If it were anyone else, they would have been dancing with joy, but she still had to think about it? Okay, take your time to think about it. Huang Zui turned his head in a fit of pique and did not look at Bei Yunj. In the end, Bei Yunj really turned around and left. Huang Zui was so angry that his beard was about to explode. However, Huang Zui was serious about accepting this student. With this kind of talent, as long as he was properly nurtured and did not go astray, he would definitely become a pillar of the country in the future, the country's future scientific research main force. In the dormitory, Haining saw that in the freshmen's group, some people were discussing the college entrance examination group's big assignment. The corners of her mouth could not help but curl up. Unexpectedly, when Haining walked into the laboratory with such a mood the next day, she heard other people discussing it. What's going on? That's impossible. How did Bei Yunj get a place in the laboratory? Suddenly, the corners of Haining's mouth froze. She looked at the person who spoke and asked, what do you mean? The boy paused and said, Professor Huang just announced that Bei Yunj is a member of the laboratory. Chapter 1257. Haining's expression changed. She had been able to enter the laboratory because of the minister's strong recommendation. Professor Huang had hesitated for a while before accepting her. But why could Bei Yunj enter the laboratory directly? Professor Huang clearly did not want to see her before and had a grudge against Bei Yunj's frequent visits to the computing department's laboratory. The people around also complained. No way? Isn't this top scholar's privilege too much? That's right. Everyone worked hard for a week or two to do homework, but in the end they couldn't even compare to Bei Yunj, who came in last. The other students were unhappy. Only Bei Yunj's team members were ashamed. They knew that they were last because they had dragged them down. It was normal for the students in the class to be unhappy. There were a total of 5 classes in the physics department, but there were only 2 spots in the laboratory. However, it had only been a few weeks since school started and Haining had already gotten a spot. This made the other students work harder and want to fight for the remaining spot. However, they did not expect Bei Yunj to suddenly get the other spot. It was fine if Haining did it, but what right did Bei Yunj have? Everyone secretly looked down on Bei Yunj's special behavior and started to distance themselves from Bei Yunj. However, Bei Yunj did not notice anything either. After class as usual, she went to the cultural center after seeing Lu Yuanxi's message. The cultural center of Yun University was very large and was almost like a medium-sized concert hall. Master Pei, it wasn't easy to invite you over. Lu Yuanxi could not help but sigh when he saw Bei Yunj. What's wrong? Bei Yunj pulled down her mask. She did not expect Song Yao to be beside her and raised an eyebrow. The school's cultural performance. I don't know who revealed that I know how to play the violin, but they got me here. Lu Yuanxi scratched the back of his head impatiently. And Sister Yao. She was recommended to play the piano with me. Isn't that good? Bei Yunj chuckled and asked lazily. Lu Yuanxi was speechless. Aren't you going to help? Qin Youjiao is also participating in the cultural performance. I heard that she even invited a popular boy group to rehearse with her. Oh right, there's also someone called Yu Ling who's performing with Qin Youjiao. I keep feeling that something's wrong. Actually, Lu Yuanxi could tell that Yu Ling wanted to provoke Song Yao. Yu Ling? Bei Yunj frowned. He had a deep impression of this person. Fu Yanbai had destroyed the Song family for Yu Ling. It's just a performance. Before Song Yao could finish speaking, Bei Yunj interrupted her. How can I help? Lu Yuanxi struck while the iron was hot. You're playing a duet with Yao Mei? However, I heard that Qin Youjiao's group song is a new work by a master from the International Musicians Association. Bei Yunj played with the ring on his index finger and leaned back lazily. I'll write the score. Lu Yuanxi's smile froze. He had forgotten about this master's extreme confidence. Qin Youjiao had already invited the big shots of the International Musicians Association to arrange the music, so how could this ancestor still dare to do it herself? Lu Yuanxi organized his words. Yunj, it's like this. We can be more serious for this performance. After all, I understand. I'll arrange the music seriously, Bei Yunj said seriously. Lu Yuanxi was speechless. Song Yao was speechless. Could someone come and interrupt this big shot's blind confidence? At last, Lu Yuanxi and Song Yao had no choice but to bite the bullet and let Bei Yunj arrange the music himself. In the laboratory. Professor, I heard that you have a data project that you need help with? Haining asked with a smile. End of chapter. Chapter 1258. Huang Zui glanced at Haining and continued with his experiment. Yes. Then can I help teach you? Haining asked excitedly. However, Huang Zui did not even look up. There's no need. Just leave it to Bei Yunj when she comes back. I can't find her all day long. Haining's smile froze and she clenched her fists. Bei Yunj again. Haining continued to smile and said casually, but I heard that Bei Yunj is preparing for the cultural performance. She seems to be very interested in extracurricular activities. Huang Zui did not understand what Haining was implying. He sneered. Oh, I didn't expect her to have a talent show. I have to go and take a look this time. Suddenly, Haining's face turned pale. Professor Huang had never liked crowds. According to the department head, he had always hated this kind of cultural performance. A few years ago, there was a senior who did not enter the laboratory because of the cultural performance. He was scolded by Professor Huang. Haining's expression was ugly. Huang Zui thought for a while and passed the data to her. Since Bei Yunj doesn't have time, you can give it a try. But this is a bit difficult for you. Haining held the document stiffly, but her face felt hot. Okay. Professor Huang actually thought that she was not as good as Bei Yunj? Only when Bei Yunj did not want it would it be her turn? Haining took the data and sat at the empty table next to her. Then she heard Huang Zui answer the phone. It was another professor from the physics department on the phone. Old Huang, your experimental skills have improved this year? Our laboratory is only halfway through this topic and you have already completed it. Tell me honestly, are you hiding something? Huang Zui's eyelids twitched. What should he say? He was also stuck in the middle for a long time. He did not expect that he would be able to complete it after being glanced at by a freshman. I'll tell you in person next time. I'm also very tired about this. Huang Zui took off his glasses and rubbed his face. Why did you call? Have you forgotten about the annual debate in the physics department? Have you decided on which students to form a team for the debate? A debate? Huang Zui hesitated for a moment, then reported a few more names, Haining, Su Xianing. However, he was still missing one. Haining suddenly smiled and said, Professor, why don't we let Bei Yunj join us? Huang Zui frowned. Actually, he was afraid that Bei Yunj would be too busy. After all, Bei Yunj still had Si Qingyan's laboratory to work on. Let's see if she's willing, Huang Zui said. Haining, okay, I will ask her. After that, Haining's eyes flashed with coldness, and the corner of her mouth curled up into a mocking smile. She then focused her attention and continued to calculate the data. Since they had praised Bei Yunj so highly, then she was going to make Bei Yunj fall even harder. Bei Yunj's reputation would be tarnished for thousands of years if the debate between the freshmen of the physics department was to be watched by the whole school. Bei Yunj had just returned to the dormitory when she suddenly heard Haining ask indifferently, Bei Yunj, do you want to participate in the physics debate competition? No. Bei Yunj did not even turn around. Haining did not expect Bei Yunj to reject her so straightforwardly. She pursed her lips. Professor Huang let you into the laboratory for you. Now the freshmen are saying that he's unfair. Don't you want to clear Professor Huang's name? Chapter 1259. Correct the name? Do I need to correct the name? Why would Professor Huang care about this kind of nonsense? Bei Yunj sneered. Haining almost couldn't say a word. Huang Zui was a loner and was often talked about. Of course, Huang Zui never took it seriously. This was inexplicably similar to Bei Yunj. Haining, if you want Bei Yunj to participate, just say so. Why do you have to put in so much effort? Su Xianing sneered and exposed Haining mercilessly. Hai Ning pursed her lips and glanced at Bei Yunj. She said sarcastically, "Isn't it because Bei Yunj doesn't dare to participate? Every class has to send 5 students to participate. Bei Yunj is a lab member, but she's afraid of losing. If this gets out, it'll be a joke." "Hai Ning, you're the one who's afraid of Bei Yunj." Su Xianing stabbed her directly. "You're talking nonsense. Why should I be afraid of her?" Hai Ning's voice suddenly became sharp. All of a sudden. "Okay, I'll participate," Bei Yunj said slowly. Hai Ning turned her head and met Bei Yunj's eyes. Bei Yunj's eyes looked like she could see through people's hearts. But in the next moment, she sneered softly and turned to leave. Hai Ning's body stiffened. Because of Bei Yunj's gaze, her face gradually became hot. Bei Yunj's gaze just now seemed to know all her intentions and was mocking her for overestimating herself. Hai Ning's eyes flashed with gloominess and she unconsciously gritted her teeth. Bei Yunj also dared to look down on her? Time passed quickly and the 6 selected students began to prepare for the oral debate. Minister Su, who organized this activity, glanced around and sneered. Bei Yunj didn't come to participate in the oral debate again? Hai Ning didn't even raise her head as she looked at the review materials. No, she never came here, did she? Department head Su was already unhappy with Bei Yunj because she was unwilling to join the department. Now he was even angrier. "I think she's really arrogant." "Hai Ning, you'll lead the team for tomorrow's debate," Minister Su said coldly before adding. Hai Ning looked pleased. "Really? What's wrong with that? Is there anyone more suitable than you?" After Minister Su finished speaking, a strange glint flashed across his eyes. He flicked the pen in his hand twice and said, "Let Bei Yunj be the substitute." When these words fell, it simply stunned everyone. Making Bei Yunj a substitute. If news of this got out, wouldn't Bei Yunj become a joke? After all, not long ago, Bei Yunj had been in the limelight because he was the top scholar of the college entrance examination. Meanwhile, the corners of Hai Ning's mouth couldn't help but curve upwards. The next day, the oral debate officially started. When the participating students saw the situation on stage, they couldn't help but feel nervous. Especially the big shots at the professor's table. After a series of questions from the contestants, almost everyone panicked. Isn't this too tragic? Are the professors asking questions that humans should ask? Su Xianing's scalp went numb. Don't say any more. We're still all right. Look, old Qi on stage can't answer the questions. His professor is sitting at the professor's table and helping to protect him. Also, even if you embarrass yourself, it's only in the department. The postgraduate students next door are the ones who are miserable. Their opponents are the postgraduate students from Neely University. Do you know that there are 2 students from Neely University? End of chapter. Chapter 1260. His students? Su Xianing covered her mouth subconsciously. Her eyes were wide open and her cheeks were a little red. Yeah, those 2 won an international award in their 2nd year of graduate studies. Sure enough, great teachers produce great students, the boy said enviously. At the same time, the contestants were standing close to each other and heard the professor next to them turn off the microphone and start a fight. You with the surname Liang, you're not done, are you? Did I not give your student's face just now? You have to look at the owner before beating the dog. The contestants on the stage were speechless. Su Xianing was speechless. She was indeed protected by her professor. Mr. Jiang, be careful. We're in front of the students. Professor Liang's eyelids twitched and he coughed lightly. If you ask my students questions again, I'll teach you a lesson when we go back. Professor Jiang snorted. Seeing this, Professor Liang had no choice but to calm him down and let this group of students go. Su Xianing suddenly reacted. Wait, but Professor Huang is not at the professor's table. The boy said, yeah, Professor Huang is leading the postgraduate team. After saying that, the boy also realized that something was wrong. Wait a minute. Since Professor Huang was not here, then they could not even be dogs? At this moment, Hai Ning straightened her back and walked out from the back. Hai Ning, our team is competing with Class 5. Professor Huang is not here. The boy was also nervous. Class 5 was led by Professor Liang. From the level of the oral defense just now, it could be seen that they were very strong. It's okay, we can win. Hai Ning said confidently and looked around. Where's Bei Yunj? She should be. Before the boy could finish, Hai Ning interrupted him and said in a mocking tone, forget it, the substitute is not that important. Anyway, it won't be her turn. Su Xianing frowned subconsciously, but the boy next to her pulled her back and gestured for her to calm down. So, Hai Ning led the team to the stage. After shaking hands with the leader of Class 5, they began to score their oral defense. Perhaps it was because Huang Zui was popular in the department. Hai Ning and Class 5 successfully scored the basic points. When Hai Ning heard the applause from the audience, the smile on her face widened and she felt very comfortable. As for the leader of Class 5, when he saw this scene, a playful look flashed in his eyes. Then he seemed to be discussing something and finally reached a consensus. The match began. To everyone's surprise, Hai Ning's team also won very easily, which made the other members of Class 1 feel a little incredulous. Unconsciously, Hai Ning had also thrown out all her cards, but she didn't notice that her opponent's face didn't show any frustration. Instead, he smiled meaningfully. At this time, Bei Yunj was caught red-handed. "You're a substitute?" The girl who rushed over asked. Bei Yunj thought for a while and answered casually, "Yes." "Then why don't you hurry up?" The girl sized up Bei Yunj and sighed inwardly. How could a postgraduate student look so young? But the next moment she dragged Bei Yunj to the postgraduate team's arena. For a moment, before she could react, Bei Yunj was taken away by accident. The competition between the graduate students had reached two extremes. The physics department of Yun University could be said to be one of the best in the country. However, they did not expect to be crushed by the students of Nili University this time. Is there no one in Yun University who can answer our question? Chapter 1261. The other party asked arrogantly. Before this, one of the students who had stayed up for several days and nights was so angry that he suddenly blacked out and collapsed. Only then did he get someone to find a substitute. Huang Zui also put on his glasses and looked at the question on the PowerPoint. His expression turned ugly. The two of them aren't from the physics department, right? The dean couldn't help but ask the other professors. Those two are from the computer science department. One of the professors glanced at the brown-haired man and the golden-haired man not far away and answered in a low voice. To be able to reach such a depth in the field of physics, aren't they from our physics department? The other professors didn't look too good. At least, with the difficulty of this question, not to mention the students, more than half of the professors might not be able to answer it completely in 15 minutes. Jianxi is also a student. I heard from her that the requirements for students are to know a little in all aspects, so... Suddenly someone explained. The professors were speechless. What kind of pervert was this? Teaching the students to be like this? Huang Zui couldn't help but sigh. I wonder if he gave the students some medicine. If that's the case, even if I have to go bankrupt, I'll give a dozen to each of them who can't even pass the graduation thesis defense. The dean and professors were speechless. Where's Jianxi? Let Jianxi try as a substitute. Suddenly a professor thought of a brilliant idea. Since they couldn't beat the students, they would let the students from university join. Jianxi said that she was too bad at computing, so she took a leave of absence and went to Country R to learn from Marcus from Country R's Computing Institute, another professor said faintly. The others were speechless. It was really a case of when it rains, it pours. At this moment, the other party continued to clamor. What's wrong? Could it be that the students from the famous Yun University can't even compare to the students from the other faculties of Nili University? Hearing this, the others were furious and wanted to rush up to beat him up. Calling university students over to participate in the competition and even giving in to Yun University. Wasn't he asking for a beating? At the same time, Bei Yunj had just arrived at the venue when she realized that it was surprisingly empty, but there were no cameras around. She hesitated for a moment and glanced at the international competition venue. Is this a thesis defense competition? The senior smiled. What else could it be? A social gathering? Bei Yunj turned around and asked, where are the others? You can go first, why do you care about the others? The senior sister directly pushed him up. As soon as Bei Yunj went on stage, she glanced at the PowerPoint presentation. Then she turned around and heard the arrogant words coming from the other side. Is there anyone who can do it? Did your school just randomly find someone to deal with it? Bei Yunj looked at the arrogant boy and raised her eyebrows lazily. At the professor's table, the professor suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. Didn't you ask Jing Xian to come? Why is there a student I don't know here? As soon as he finished speaking, Huang Zui, who was drinking tea, suddenly looked up. When he saw Bei Yunj on the stage, he spat out his tea. The others looked at Huang Zui. Huang Zui, on the other hand, was completely dumbfounded. His mind was filled with questions. Why are you here? Shouldn't Bei Yunj be at the freshman debate right now? Why was she at the graduate student team's debate? Bei Yunj didn't have much patience, but she still lowered her voice. She casually pulled down the brim of her hat to avoid the camera and frowned. "Didn't you ask me to come?" End of chapter. Chapter 1262. Next, Neely University student was still laughing strangely. "Another one to make up the numbers? If you can't do it then." That person had not finished speaking. Bei Yunj picked up the chalk and pulled up her black mask with one hand. Then she scribbled 2 sentences on the blackboard. In the end she wrote down an answer. From the moment she entered until now, she had answered the difficult questions that had trapped all the graduate students of Yun University. This made the venue suddenly silent. Then they saw Bei Yunj throw the chalk into the trash can closest to Neely University student. Her eyes seemed to be smiling, but there was no warmth. "Other than teaching you to talk nonsense, what else does your professor do?" Her tone was slow, but it was wild and wild. Compared to the arrogant Neely University student just now, the person in front of her had a strong aura. She was simply beating everyone else. When the Yun University students heard this, they were simply overjoyed. What kind of immortal candidate was this? However, very soon Huang Zui's graduate student was puzzled. "Strange, why does this girl look so familiar?" Suddenly, the graduate student slammed the table and stood up. You. You're this year's college entrance examination top scorer." The others were stunned when they heard that. This year's college entrance examination top scorer? Wasn't she just a freshman? Why was she a candidate for the graduate student? She was so strong even though she was of a higher level? What kind of cheat king was this? "Why are you our substitute?" the graduate student asked from the bottom of his heart. "Bei Yunj, I was dragged here." Upon finishing her words, the senior who had dragged her over froze. Could it be that she had dragged the wrong person? "Wang Guangyun, I asked you to drag someone. Can you drag a man into a woman?" The teacher was exasperated and her lungs hurt from anger. At this moment, Bei Yunj also realized the situation. She looked at the people staring at her and was silent for a moment. "Sorry, there's a mistake. I'm the substitute next door." Upon finishing her words, Bei Yunj prepared to leave the stage. She did not feel embarrassed at all. The others were speechless. This was not bad. After winning the other party, she trampled on them and even apologized politely. "Wait." Huang Zui called out to Bei Yunj. When she turned around to look at him, he said, "You can compete here." The other professors also nodded in their hearts. They stared at Bei Yunj as if they were afraid that she would run away. The students of Neely University seemed to understand what Yun University was trying to do and immediately retorted, "She's just an undergraduate student. It's not against the rules for her to participate in our debate." "Senior sister, just because you say no, it doesn't mean no? You even found 2 computer science students for the physics department's competition. How dare you criticize us?" Instantly, the faces of the Neely University students turned red. They couldn't retort. "If you want her to go, then let her go. Could it be that our Neely University will lose just because your Yun University has a replacement?" The boy from Neely University sneered. "You're a freshman, right? Come quickly, I want to see what you're capable of." After that, both sides began the next round of debate. The other professors kept a close eye on Bei Yunj, afraid that Bei Yunj would leave. After all, everyone had heard of the temper of this college entrance examination top scholar. It was said that back then, in order to poach Bei Yunj into Yun University, the principal had played cards with old Master Qin for the entire afternoon and even lost all his private savings. But now it seemed that his private savings were worth it. Bei Yunj took off her jacket casually and threw it on the back of the chair. She sneered. "What's the hurry? Will someone offer you incense later?" As soon as she finished speaking, all the teachers and students of Yun University were speechless. The atmosphere was strange. Chapter 1263. This speech was at a level that even his own people felt was ruthless. "Old Huang, don't you think that your student has a good temper? I think there will be a lot of training in the future." Huang Zui sneered as he defended his student. "What's wrong? I, Old Zhang, won first place in the international physics competition at the age of 16. Do I still need others to teach my students?" "Fine, your student won't let me say it." At this moment, Neely University students were also furious. But in the following competition, because of a freshman team substitute, it caused a crushing reversal. During the debate, the other students of Yun University were all holding the information and treating this competition seriously. However, Bei Yunj leaned lazily against the podium as if he had no bones. Facing the questions of Neely University students, even the draft paper used by the contestants was snow white. After scanning the question information, he threw it on the table. But to the students of Neely University, what was this if not provocation? Could it be that the draft paper was not even worthy of being used in a competition with them? However, no matter how biased the direction of the question they chose was, this person was like a living library. From time to time he would counterattack, leaving the person who came up with the question speechless. In the end, no one took too much from Bei Yunj. There are still 2 points to tie. Isn't your school going to work harder? Bei Yunj caught up with young Master Yun's 30 points alone. This made the faces of the students of Neely University turn ashen. Meanwhile, the professors of Yun University were all elated and in high spirits. Look, this was the style of their Yun University students. What are you so proud of? The students of Neely University were flustered and exasperated. They gathered again to discuss how to get their team's trump card to come back. They didn't believe that Bei Yunj wouldn't kneel down and admit defeat this time. At the professor's table. What are they discussing? The dean couldn't help asking. Huang Zui said calmly, they should be asking the 2 from the computer science department to come back. Those 2 students? When the professors heard this, their expressions did not look too good. Actually, Jasmine and Tich had come to the scene just now, but they felt that the scene was boring, so they threw out a question and left. And the question that they threw out just happened to be the question that Bei Yunj had solved. They felt that Bei Yunj was talented, but this student, they were not on the same level. Huang Zui pursed his lips and hinted at her through the microphone, Bei Yunj, if you don't think you can perform well in the next round, you can quit anytime. Who knew? Bei Yunj did not receive any hint from Huang Zui. Instead, he turned his back to Huang Zui and casually made an OK sign. Huang Zui, the professor next to him, also smiled stiffly. It's good for young people to be confident. Huang Zui, soon. The students of Neely University were in an uproar. The professors of Yun University turned around and saw Jasmine and Tich walking in. Facing the personal student of a top researcher, they couldn't help but feel heavy in their hearts. Jasmine, Tich, it's up to you to bring glory to the school. The other students cheered Jasmine and Tich on. However, when the 2 of them found out that a group of graduate students from their school could not beat the freshmen from Yunhua University's physics department, they could not help but want to curse. Were these people useless? However, their extremely disdainful and arrogant attitude persisted until they turned around and saw a familiar face. Chapter 1264. Who the F***ck were they supposed to compete with? Bei Yunj was also caught off guard by the sight of her own students. No one had expected that they would meet on the competition stage. Especially when Bei Yunj's eyes were saying, let's see who still has a brain full of wastewater and needs me to shake it. In the end, she met her own 2 students. This was probably the most subtle thing Bei Yunj had ever encountered in her life. She wanted to teach them a lesson, but she didn't expect them to be her own students. Bei Yunj, Jasmine and Tich were also arrogant just now, and their expressions were exactly the same as their own teachers. However, when they saw their teacher, they were instantly terrified. How could their teacher be a freshman in the physics department? Before they could figure it out, the students beside them whispered passionately, Tich, Jasmine, quick, kill her. Jasmine and Tich, I'll kill your mother. Teacher? Jasmine quickly changed his words and asked carefully, why are you in the physics department? Bei Yunj looked up and said casually, you're interfering in my business? Jasmine, I wouldn't dare, teacher. When Tich thought about competing with his own teacher, he wanted to faint on the spot and stay in the hospital. However, the next moment he still looked at his teacher eagerly. Then, do we still want to compete? Bei Yunj closed her eyes. Her heart went numb at the thought of this situation. She couldn't help but take a deep breath. Damn. She opened her eyes again and glanced at Jasmine and Tich. She took off her hat impatiently and brushed her black hair back again. She said impatiently, get ready. Hurry up. Everyone looked at Jasmine and Tich on the stage. The way they chatted with Bei Yunj was like a large pet dog that had become obedient in an instant. They felt that something was wrong, and in the following competition, everyone felt that the atmosphere was strange. Bei Yunj listened patiently, as if she was listening to a child performing a solo performance. Tich and Jasmine tried their best not to be nervous as they asked questions carefully. This scene was very similar to the graduation debate they had experienced. Jasmine and Tich were here for their graduation debate, and Bei Yunj was their debate teacher. As Bei Yunj listened, at first she fell into a self-reflection of, Did I teach them like this? Later on, she would occasionally lower her head and let out an extremely soft sneer, directly falling into self-mockery. She wondered if her teaching skills were too bad. However, she did not expect Jasmine and Li Yunj to see Pei Yunj's every frown and smile. It was as if they saw Bei Yunj to say, "I've to teach you too to be trash to be able to you." Jasmine and Tich felt suffocated and caught a cold. Yunj to Bei Yunj to Bei Yunj to be Bei to be 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 the trash. Pei Yunj was silent for a moment before she asked slowly, "Is that all your teacher taught you?" The others were in an uproar. Wasn't this college entrance examination top scorer a little too daring? She actually dared to point out that he wasn't good at his job? Jasmine was the only one who felt numb. What else could be scarier than a teacher doubting her own teaching skills in front of her students? After the debate, Jasmine and Tich felt like they were taking an exam on the spot. They were helpless and afraid. However, in the end, Bei Yunj looked at Jasmine and Tich in silence and started to go easy on her students without blushing. Chapter 1265. I don't know. Next question. Bei Yunj said so matter-of-factly that people wondered if they had heard wrongly. After all, Bei Yunj's counterattack just now was too violent. Jasmine and Tich also felt it. Their teacher was starting to close his eyes and go easy on them. What kind of touching teacher-student relationship was this? Although Bei Yunj usually didn't like to talk nonsense with them and even despised them for not being smart, he was still protective of them at critical moments. Jasmine and Tich were touched, but at the same time, they trembled in fear as they continued to probe their teacher. Bei Yunj glanced at the scoreboard from the corner of his eye. He was going easy on them one by one and said that he didn't know how to answer with his eyes closed. The Yun University teachers and students who felt that something was amiss were speechless. What was going on? Was there a traitor in their team? Meanwhile, Bei Yunj was still thinking of ways to go easy on Jasmine and Tich. At the end, when the referee set the questions, Bei Yunj and Jasmine and Tich answered in two different areas. Half an hour later, to everyone's surprise, Bei Yunj's score was actually similar to Jasmine and Tich's. Yun University won slightly, but Jasmine and Tich didn't lose badly either. After the competition ended, the Yun University students finally heaved a sigh of relief, while the Neely University students were like frosted eggplants. Huang Zui came down from the professor's seat and couldn't help but ask, "How did your score get so close to your opponents?" Huang Zui thought that Bei Yunj was sensible and knew not to embarrass the other schools. However, in the next second, Pei Yunj glanced at the two people not far away carelessly and snorted coldly. "I know very well how many nerves they have in their brains." Huang Zui was speechless. Why did this sound so ridiculous? At the same time, the other graduate students were numb as they watched Bei Yunj torture the graduate students from Neely University. What kind of reincarnation was this? Did torturing students feel no pressure at all? However, the scene changed. On the other side, the situation of the freshman group debate suddenly changed. Hai Ning, who had led the team to victory, looked at the current score with a pale face. Class 5 was clearly toying with her. In the beginning, he had held back his strength, allowing her to throw out her trump card without fear. But in the end, he had turned around and killed her? Hai Ning was completely caught off guard. What should we do? Why do we keep losing? The boys in Class 1 couldn't help but murmur. The audience also imperceptibly gave them a lot of pressure. "Let Bei Yunj do it," Su Xianing suddenly said. But Hai Ning suddenly became agitated. "What's the use of Bei Yunj coming? She's just a substitute. Do you expect her to turn the situation around?" After saying this, Hai Ning turned around and saw that Bei Yunj had just returned. She put her hands in her pockets carelessly and blew bubble gum. She glanced at the poor results of the first class and sat next to the girl from the philosophy department. She had an expression that said, "It has nothing to do with me." Hai Ning's face sank. But in the next moment she heard the leader of Class 5 ask boldly with a smile, "At this point, you're still hiding your class's college entrance examination top scorer? What's the matter? Are we not worthy of being compared to your class's top scorer?" Hearing this, Hai Ning trembled with anger. Bei Yunj was just a substitute, so she was not qualified to compete directly. But others thought that Pei Yunj was their team's trump card? Chapter 1266. The rest of the people's eyes also landed on Bei Yunj, who was biting her bubble gum. It was as if they were waiting for Bei Yunj to appear. "Yunj?" Song Yao called out hesitantly. Bei Yunj looked up at Song Yao and said faintly, "No, I'm not going up. I've already done it as a substitute." Wouldn't it be bullying if I do it again? She had already hurt her own student and still came over to bully this group of people. Si Qingyin could at least treat her as a joke for a year. Song Yao asked, "You've done it? Didn't she just arrive?" Before Bei Yunj could reply, Hai Ning said sharply, "Bei Yunj, didn't you agree to participate in the competition and be a substitute? Are you going back on your word at the last minute?" With that said, everyone's eyes landed on Bei Yunj. So the top scholar of the college entrance examination was just a substitute? Wasn't she too pitiful? Or did this top scholar really rely on her college entrance examination scores to not take others seriously and was overtaken by other team members? Everyone's thoughts ran wild. However, Bei Yunj was pushed out by Song Yao. Hai Ning lowered her head and met Song Yao's cold gaze that seemed to be smiling but was not smiling. It was obvious that she was hostile. Was this philosophy department belle protecting Bei Yunj so much? However, before Bei Yunj, who was pushed up, could bite her bubble gum, she stood below the stage and looked at Song Yao with twitching eyelids. Why was this fellow's temper getting worse? Bei Yunj was pushed out and could not go down, so she could only walk up the stage slowly. At the same time, Professor Liang, who was at the professor's seat, finally got through to Huang Zui. "Are you coming? Your students are about to be wiped out. They can't take it anymore." "No, we're here to comfort Neely University students." With that said, Professor Liang was stunned. What's going on? Didn't they say during the competition that the students of Neely University tortured their Yun University's children until their lungs hurt? Sai, I can't explain it in one sentence. By the way, is Bei Yunj with you? Huang Zui asked. Yes. Huang Zui said, "Then let her sit in my seat and help me score." Professor Liang, what? Isn't she a substitute in your class? Hearing this, Huang Zui sneered, substitute? Even if she's a substitute, it won't be glorious even if our class wins. Cut the crap. Put Bei Yunj on the phone. When Professor Liang heard this, he had no choice but to call Bei Yunj over to answer the phone. Huang Zui only said, "I have already told the other professors that you will take my place. Don't be afraid when I'm not around. Keep an eye on your students and don't let them bully you. If anyone wants to target you, I'll come back immediately and deal with them." After that, Huang Zui hung up. Bei Yunj, Professor Liang also looked at Bei Yunj curiously. He wondered how capable Bei Yunj was to make the arrogant Huang Zui treat her differently. What did Professor Huang say? Bei Yunj glanced at him. "Let me give him a score." Everyone saw that not long after Professor Liang and Bei Yunj's discussion, Bei Yunj, who was a substitute, did not go to Class 1's team. Instead, she followed Professor Liang and sat on Huang Zui's chair. Everyone's eyes widened in disbelief when they saw this scene. The atmosphere suddenly exploded. Why was Bei Yunj sitting on the professor's chair? Hai Ning, the leader of Class 1, was also shocked. But then, Professor Liang announced, "Everyone, Professor Huang Zui has something on and can't leave. Hence, student pay will be Professor Huang's judge." Chapter 1267. What the F***CK? Is the top scorer's father a god? This is the first time I've heard of a freshman replacing her professor. Sorry to bother you, but I'm afraid I'll never be able to sit in that position in my life. The top scorer's father is too strong, right? There was a heated discussion below the stage, but Bei Yunj's expression was calm. She casually flipped through these documents, but she seemed indifferent. The other professors did not expect Huang Zui to find a young girl to replace him. Okay, let's continue with the competition. After Professor Liang finished speaking, the contestants on the stage all had ugly expressions. Who wouldn't feel uncomfortable when they saw a freshman sitting in the professor's seat while they were just a contestant? Hai Ning's eyes were red and she could not help but tremble. She felt a burning pain on her face. She thought that she had finally beaten Bei Yunj and won the position of the team leader. She was smug. But what was the result? Bei Yunj was replacing Professor Huang as a judge? Hai Ning swallowed her anger. The other professors waited for the competition to start and began to have their own thoughts. Everyone looked at the last 3 classes. Their professors were more or less protective of their own students or deliberately made things difficult for the students from other classes. For example, Class 1. At this moment, Huang Zui was not here. The professors did not take Bei Yunj seriously and even deducted the points of Class 1 until they were almost only at the basic level. The students in Class 1 were so angry that they shouted that it was unfair. However, Bei Yunj was very calm as if nothing had happened. Hai Ning sneered. What's the use of letting her replace Professor Huang? Class 1 was not the target of the professor's attacks. They were maliciously deducted points. However, when the next group of contestants started their oral defense, the professors in Class 5 were on good terms with the other professors, so they only asked the more basic questions. Without a doubt, if this was the case, Class 5's final score would definitely be much higher than Class 1's. But just when everyone thought that the result was predictable, Bei Yunj suddenly spoke. She asked politely, "Can I ask a few questions?" The other professors did not think much of it. How could a freshman ask any technical questions? Of course. Aren't you replacing Professor Huang? The other professors were very polite. At this moment, the leader of Class 5 raised his eyebrows at Bei Yunj. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask. The leader of Class 5 also found the person sitting on the teacher's seat unpleasant to the eye, so he was secretly competing with him. He was confident that Bei Yunj was not much stronger than him. Sure. Bei Yunj nodded in response. Then he slowly flipped through their information book and began to ask questions at a moderate pace. However, when the first question was thrown out, the smile of the leader of Class 5 froze. The other professors' faces turned pale as they turned to look at Bei Yunj, who was still smiling. At this moment they were completely shocked. How good could that old thing Huang Zui be? How could he find someone easy to bully and let the other classes take advantage of him? After Bei Yunj asked 4 or 5 questions and the note-taker wrote down the questions on the PowerPoint, the professors' expressions were extremely ugly. These questions were so tricky that they might not even be able to answer them. Not to mention these freshmen. Bei Yunj, these questions of yours? However, before the professor could finish, Bei Yunj interrupted him and said without blushing, "The professors are so nice to my class because they like students like me who love to ask questions. You won't be angry, right?" Chapter 1268. The professors had just suppressed their anger when they heard Bei Yunj intentionally or unintentionally move closer to the microphone. "I'm just a student. Professors, don't be calculative with me." The students below the stage heard it clearly. What kind of ruthless person was the top scorer's father? Even the professors of the department were being deceived? The professors were speechless. Compared to Huang Zui, who lost his temper at the slightest disagreement, Huang Zui's student was simply King Evil. "You can't answer these questions?" Bei Yunj turned her head and her gaze fell on the leader of Class 5. She leaned lazily on the table with one hand and suddenly leaned closer to the microphone. Her voice was low and pleasant as she spat out an obscure foreign language. Only the professors could tell that this was a classic foreign literature about the topic of the contestants of Class 5. If ordinary students wanted to borrow foreign literature, they would have to spend a lot of energy to understand these academic terms. Even they did not have the energy to memorize the foreign literature word for word. However, when they picked up their phones to check what Bei Yunj said matched up word for word. A few graduate students who joined in the fun were shocked. CK, this is this year's top scorer? She's even more ridiculous than our top scorer. This is a literature written by Mancheston in our nation 30 years ago, right? I happened to do this topic before and spent half a month looking up the information. There's actually a big shot who can recite it directly? What? The others could not help but gasp. They originally thought that this year's top scorer was the worst and that the alumni group was full of negative comments about Bei Yunj. In the end, she was not even on the same level as them. The students of Class 1 looked at Bei Yunj's side profile on the stage and their collective sense of honor was instantly ignited. They could not help but straighten their backs. Wasn't the most powerful big shot in their class? Moreover, seeing Bei Yunj on the stage not giving the professors any face, the students of Class 1 felt inexplicably relieved. Suddenly they had a feeling that as long as Bei Yunj was around, no accidents would happen. However, the professors were so angry that they wanted to tear Huang Zui apart. After Bei Yunj's fuss, they could not even give Class 5 the basic points. Even the other topics of the other classes, Bei Yunj was like a walking literature library. It made people start to doubt their lives and they could not answer a single question. At this moment, the other freshmen also had complicated feelings. They were all freshmen of Yun University. How could there be such a ridiculous gap? After the competition that made people doubt their lives, no one had any enthusiasm for the champion or the runner-up. Instead, they began to think in a daze, so the one who was making up the numbers in the world was actually me? Class 5 still won first place, but they weren't very happy. After all, not everyone participated in the competition. There was another student of the same grade as them was their judge. What? It's really strange. Some people haven't won any awards, right? How can she replace the professors? The leader of Class 5 sneered. Besides, our theme has already been reported. It shouldn't be difficult to memorize some foreign languages, right? Hearing this, many people in Class 1 wanted to rush up and tear this person's mouth apart. It's not difficult to memorize some foreign languages. You've been preparing for half a month. Why can't you memorize it? Song Yao's originally gentle tone gave people a tenacious attitude, making them speechless. You. The leader of Class 5's face flushed red. At this moment, Hai Ning, who was beside him, spoke casually. Chapter 1269. No wonder Bei Yunj didn't participate in the training even though she was a substitute. Hai Ning turned around and smiled. I really didn't expect things to turn out like this. Hai Ning, we're from the same class. You have to say that? The other contestants frowned. It was one thing for the other classes to tear Bei Yunj apart, but why was Hai Ning's brain so muddled? Did I say something wrong? Hai Ning looked calm, but her hands were trembling under her sleeves. Bei Yunj had become the judge of her competition, but she didn't even get first place. She only got second place. She could already imagine how those people in the class who didn't like her would mock her behind her back. As soon as she finished speaking, suddenly there was a commotion in the crowd. Why is it you again? Everyone turned around and saw a gray-haired foreign man. He was dressed very nicely and wore a pair of glasses. Bei Yunj turned to look at him and raised her eyebrows. She had some impression of this person. This was a professor from the physics department of Neely University. She had met him once before. When you were in your second year of high school, our physics and mathematics department gave you an offer, right? I didn't expect you to go to Yun University. The professor didn't hide his love for Bei Yunj at all. When he looked at Bei Yunj, he was all smiles. It wasn't like his cold and serious expression just now. Neely University is too far away. Bei Yunj's tone was still perfunctory, but her beautiful eyes were curved, making people have a good impression of her. It's quite far. The professor from Neely University nodded thoughtfully and deliberately said, but the school you chose is quite interesting. A genius like you would definitely be highly sought after in our Neely University. But how can you be a freshman substitute here? Why don't you consider transferring to our Neely University? The scholarship will definitely be generous. With that, the smiles of the principal, dean, and professors froze. They didn't expect Neely University to be so shameless. What nonsense was he saying in front of them? Professor Lei Jun, isn't it inappropriate for you to poach someone in front of us? The principal of Yun University smiled insincerely. Professor Lei Jun was extremely arrogant. Is poaching someone dirty? Why did they have to dig in secret? In my eyes, isn't this the treatment a genius deserves? Since your school doesn't respect geniuses, why don't you send her to a more suitable school? No one had expected that the two top universities would actually tear each other apart over a student. Seeing this scene, Hai Ning couldn't help but clench her fists. Her eyes began to turn red with jealousy, and her whole body trembled. Neely University was the #1 elite school in the world. Even the students of Neely University were very willing to go to Neely University to further their studies. How could such a school offer Bei Yunj, who was in her second year of high school? Hai Ning's mind was burning with anger and jealousy, and she couldn't help but blurt out. Classmate Pei, were you that good in high school? It seems that classmate Pei was too low-key. As his roommate, I didn't realize it. However, I really want to see classmate Pei's ability with my own eyes. Speaking of this, Hai Ning deliberately smiled at Bei Yunj. But suddenly, the next moment, Professor Lei Jun laughed in disbelief. Are all the students of Yun University so naive? The principal and the rest didn't look too good. How could they not understand what he meant? Are all the students of Yun University so ignorant? Chapter 1270. That's strange. In the debate, Bei Yunj defeated our Neely University's graduate students alone. What else do we need to see with our own eyes? Professor Lei Jun's tone was mocking as he mocked Hai Ning mercilessly. Instantly, Hai Ning's face turned pale. What? Hai Ning's voice trembled slightly as she clenched her fist subconsciously. Bei Yunj defeated the Neely University's graduate students? However, someone had clearly come over just now and said that their senior brother and sister had been beaten up by the Neely University students today. But why was it that Bei Yunj had defeated the Neely University's graduate students? At this moment, there was an uproar below the stage. How is that possible? A freshman defeated the Neely University's graduate students? I heard that there are two big shots in there. Someone couldn't help but exclaim. It's Jasmine and Titch, right? Half an hour ago, I heard from my senior that Yun University was crushed by Neely University this time. In the end there was such a reversal? This is too ridiculous. The top scholar's father is still the top scholar's father. The surrounding discussions made Hai Ning feel even more ashamed and her expression turned even uglier. Especially Meng Wenwen, who had looked down on Bei Yunj before choosing Hai Ning in the end, her pupils constricted as she subconsciously shook her head. How is that possible? How is that possible? How could Bei Yunj have defeated the group of graduate students from Neely University? They were the elites of the elite schools. If she hadn't chosen to join Hai Ning's group because she thought that Bei Yunj was weak, would she have been able to use Bei Yunj's halo to do well at Yun University? At the thought of this, Meng Wenwen couldn't help but glance at Su Xianing and the others who were chatting with Bei Yunj. She couldn't help but bite her lip. The regret and frustration in her heart couldn't dissipate. However, not long after, the news of Bei Yunj tearing apart the entire team of graduate students from Neely University spread throughout the school. Some people also started to guess who would be able to pluck a beautiful and terrifying flower like the top scholar's father. On the forum, even Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing were popular candidates for Bei Yunj's official matchmaking. However, because Bei Yunj sent Song Yao to the school building with an umbrella, there was a sudden gust of evil wind in the forum and the popularity of the Song Yao group soared that night. She completely suppressed the other popular male leads. In the dormitory, as soon as Bei Yunj pushed the door open, she saw Hai Ning crying. Chao Yingying comforted her, but she didn't say a word when she saw Bei Yunj. But she also seemed to be condemning Bei Yunj with her eyes. It was as if all this was because of Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj turned a blind eye and was about to take a shower when she saw Hai Ning suddenly stand up and stare at her with red eyes. Bei Yunj, why didn't you tell me? Bei Yunj raised his eyebrows and didn't say a word. He quietly waited for Hai Ning to say something else. Have you always found him an eyesore? Is that why you deliberately embarrassed me? Hai Ning laughed coldly. You're not as indifferent as you look on the surface. Otherwise you wouldn't be so close to Lu Yuanxi and Song Yao, right? Well, that's true. I heard from the music faculty that Song Yao is a habitual offender. What slutty. Her strength was hidden in her bones. Before she could finish speaking, Bei Yunj suddenly took a few steps forward and pressed her down to sit down. Hai Ning looked up and met Bei Yunj's fierce eyes. There was a faint smile on her face, but it was very cold. Continue. I'm listening. The surrounding atmosphere was terrifying. Chapter 1271. Bei Yunj, what are you trying to do? Chao Yingying mustered up her courage and asked. But the next moment, Bei Yunj glanced at her coldly and Chao Yingying didn't dare to say another word. Bei Yunj sneered and turned to look at Hai Ning's pale face. Hai Ning's fearful eyes seemed to be saying that the person in front of her was a lunatic. And those who didn't know what was going on would think that Bei Yunj was doing something violent to Hai Ning. You're not going to continue? Then I'll continue. Bei Yunj turned around and leaned forward with one hand on the armrest of the chair. The smile in his eyes made one's scalp tingle. Do you think I'm a lunatic? Then why don't you know that a lunatic has no bottom line? After saying that, Bei Yunj straightened her back and pulled a towel from the side. She slowly wiped her hands and threw it at Hai Ning's face. Hai Ning trembled. The girl tilted her head and glanced at her coldly. She was unruly and arrogant. Su Xianing entered the dormitory with a book of questions and saw this scene. What was going on? Was she being lectured by a big shot? Chao Yingying, who was usually the most arrogant, couldn't even let out a fart. Bei Yunj, what are you doing? Su Xianing wasn't afraid of Bei Yunj because she knew that as long as she didn't touch Bei Yunj's bottom line, Bei Yunj's temper was very good. However, Bei Yunj was probably in a bad mood today. He glanced at her and said casually, what can I do? Do you? Su Xianing, Bei Yunj, this B** starred was simply too much. So flirtatious. After saying that, Bei Yunj took his clothes and went to take a shower, leaving Su Xianing scolding him. After taking a shower, when Bei Yunj walked out, he found that Hai Ning and the others were gone. Only Su Xianing was left. I just heard Hai Ning say that she is preparing to move out of the dormitory. Did you deal with her? Su Xianing asked. Bei Yunj sighed and leaned lazily against the door to think about it. Maybe. Su Xianing, I'll go downstairs to buy something later. What do you want to eat? Bei Yunj was wiping her wet black hair. Her aura was cold and pleasant. Mango. Su Xianing raised her head abruptly. Bei Yunj glanced at her, then turned back and said lightly, No, change it. Su Xianing was instantly angry. Do you want to go against me? Bei Yunj put on his jacket and picked up his phone. He looked at her leisurely and said, I don't want to hear you crying in pain by my side tomorrow as if I did something wrong. These words made Su Xianing remember that these 2 days were her period. Last time, because she ate a mango, she was in so much pain that she cried in her bed. She thought that no one had heard about it. No wonder Bei Yunj brought her a week's worth of brown sugar ginger tea and said that the supermarket next door gave it to her for a promotion. Then I want the ginger tea you bought last time. Su Xianing hugged the pillow awkwardly. Bei Yunj glanced at her, nodded softly and went out. In fact, many people did not know that Su Xianing and Bei Yunj had such a good relationship. In particular, many people in Yunqing High School knew that Su Xianing hated Bei Yunj very much. There were even people on the forum who made bets about when Bei Yunj would beat up Su Xianing, who had a bad temper. In the end, who would have thought that the big boss would bring her roommate brown sugar ginger tea every month? Chapter 1272. After Bei Yunj went out, she bought a big bag of brown sugar ginger tea, wine and cigarettes from the supermarket. However, when she sat by the river and snapped back to her senses, she realized that she was not holding cigarettes but candy. She licked her lips and casually unwrapped a piece of candy. However, she was thinking about the project that was difficult to get closer to. Bei Yunj was indeed not in a good mood these 2 days because she was at a bottleneck. Everyone had a bottleneck period and she was no exception. In her previous life, when she was at a bottleneck, she had only stopped experimenting for half a year. However, there were already rumors that she had run out of ideas. This time, Zhong Xinglin wanted her to relax for a year or two before coming back to break through the bottleneck. After all, Bei Yunj was still too young, and her research results in the past 2 years were indeed shocking. If there was no bottleneck period, could she still be considered human? As for those who knew that she was at a bottleneck, only Si Qingyan was very happy because Bei Yunj was so bored that she could go to the laboratory to help him. A year or two, Bei Yunj closed her eyes, feeling a little lost. If she gave up on her research, what else could she do? Until the next moment. Bei Yunj had just stood up and was about to go back when a large black shadow appeared out of nowhere and almost pounced on Bei Yunj. She turned around and saw that it was a lass, who had not been successful in losing weight. Bei Yunj looked back and saw the male owner who had allowed the dog to commit murder. Her eyes flickered slightly as she looked up at the man not far away. The man was dressed very casually in a simple white t-shirt and short-sleeved shirt. He looked like a classy senior in school, but he was constantly attracting the attention of the people around him. Bei Yunj's hand stopped and she forgot to stroke a lass's fur. She stared blankly at the man's upturned eyes under the sparkling moonlight. His eyes were dark and there was a faint smile on his face. There was a hint of laziness and frivolity. Didn't you say that whoever has food is a father? The man looked at a lass, raised his eyebrows and sneered. He still hasn't acknowledged me. I've raised him for nothing. Bei Yunj snapped back to her senses and asked instinctively, Are you done? Yes. The man responded and took a step forward. Before he could take out what he was hiding behind his back, Bei Yunj suddenly stood up. She walked forward and hugged the man's strong waist. The man was also stunned for a moment. Then he couldn't help but chuckle. He reached out and rubbed the girl's head as if to comfort her. You haven't been able to get through to me for 7 days, and you're taking advantage of me as soon as we meet. Yin? When Bei Yunj heard this, she realized that her phone might have been in arrears. Don't you have something to do overseas? When the words came out of her mouth, Bei Yunj subconsciously glanced at Huoshidu again. She thought her tone was quite cold. However, in the man's eyes, it was more like she was acting coquettishly. What? Huoshidu bent down and leaned closer to her, pretending that he did not hear her clearly. The cold and familiar scent made one's heart pound like a drum. Bei Yunj immediately thought of the kissing scene in the Japanese drama that her roommates had watched before. Before this, Bei Yunj had always thought that such cultural passion was free. However, at this moment, Bei Yunj's expression did not look too good. How did you greet people when you were in the Fernan's family? Ha! Huoshidu glanced at Bei Yunj and quickly reacted. The corners of his thin red lips curled up again. An ordinary kissing ceremony. Bei Yunj, this man was not manly. How many have you kissed? Bei Yunj looked straight at him. Chapter 1273. Huoshidu suppressed the smile on his lips and said to her, I've never counted. Bei Yunj's good-looking face was stiff, but because of the anger in her eyes, it inexplicably became more lively. But actually, Huashidu saw that he was almost done teasing her. He bent down and stared straight at his little girl. His slender and well-defined hand gently lifted her chin. The next moment, before Bei Yunj could react, the man suddenly leaned close to her and kissed her cheek gently with his thin red lips. He left behind a warm and heart-trembling sensation. Without waiting for her to react, the man curled his lips and turned sideways again to kiss Bei Yunj's other cheek. At this moment, Bei Yunj's mind was in a mess and her entire body stiffened. However, the man licked the corner of his lips and the sound of his chuckle landed beside Bei Yunj's ear. It was even more ambiguous and lecherous as he used his fingers to gently wipe the cheek that he had just kissed. I've only kissed one person since I became an adult. I still don't really remember. The man's low and magnetic voice was bewitching and deadly. His peach blossom eyes were deep and dark as he stared straight at her moist red lips. Was this how you kissed me just now, Yunyan? Instantly, Bei Yunj felt her ears burning. Seeing that she was silent, the man asked knowingly, "What's wrong?" Bei Yunj did not even raise her head. Her tone sounded very calm. Shameless. Soon, the man could not help but laugh. He unconsciously bent down and gently leaned his head against Bei Yunj's neck. The light laughter and the man's slightly trembling shoulders made Bei Yunj's ears even hotter. What? The man's peach blossom eyes were filled with smiles, as if he was constantly flirting with her. You're shameless like this? Yunyan, you're too strict with me. As soon as he finished speaking, Bei Yunj finally reacted. She was surrounded by young couples who were kissing passionately. Bei Yunj, who suddenly came to her senses, suddenly remembered that this was the sacred dating ground for couples at Yin University. He had unknowingly walked here just now. But soon Bei Yunj looked up at Huashidu. Why are you here? When the man heard this, his laughter faded. He lazily scratched her chin. Isn't that what I should be asking you? Bei Yunj. When he first came over, Huashidu also saw a few boys holding roses and following behind Bei Yunj. However, Bei Yunj was eating candy and sitting by the bridge. No one knew what she was thinking. She looked impatient, so no one dared to go over. This flower is for me? Bei Yunj saw the flowers in Huashidu's hands and quietly changed the topic. At the same time, she took the large bouquet of roses from the man's hands. When the surrounding people accidentally saw this scene, they almost cried out in surprise. Was the one by the riverside in the dating Holy Land the top scorer of this batch of freshmen? However, Bei Yunj frowned. She did not like other people paying attention to Huashidu, so she simply pulled Huashidu along another dimly lit path. However, the large bouquet of roses blocked her view. Bei Yunj accidentally stepped on a smooth cobblestone and almost fell. However, a moment ago, the man casually supported Bei Yunj's forearm. Bei Yunj also subconsciously hugged Huashidu's waist. She could even feel the man's firm and warm abs. Pei Qian had a bad feeling. As expected. Then she heard the man ask slowly, "What are you doing, Yunyan?" Then the man's light words entered Bei Yunj's ears. Pervert. Bei Yunj. Chapter 1274. Bei Yunj's eyelids twitched. Before she could say anything, she heard the man's next sentence with a slow chuckle. Yunyan, I understand that you're young and impetuous, but you're too impatient. You can do whatever you want when we get to the apartment. Bei Yunj, what nonsense was he talking about? However, in the next moment, Bei Yunj suddenly remembered the brown sugar ginger tea in her bag. No, I want to go back to the dormitory. Huashidu turned to look at her, as if waiting for her to explain the reason. My roommate wants to drink brown sugar ginger tea. Bei Yunj looked at her watch and carried a big bouquet of roses. She handed the dog leash to Huashidu and turned to leave quickly. Brother, I'll look for you for dinner tomorrow. The man stood where he was and watched the girl leave. His good-looking eyebrows slowly raised. Then he lowered his head and looked at Alas. He squatted down and scratched Alas's chin with his well-defined hand. He said casually and lazily, "Tell me, why did you follow such a little scumbag?" No one knew if he was a human or a dog when he said this. On that day, the people on the forum went crazy. Their Yun University school belle was actually having a private meeting with someone in the sacred land of lovers? However, the photos that everyone took were not very clear. They could only see that the other party was good-looking from a blurry perspective. He had completely crushed their school hunk, Cheng Zihuai. When did our school have such a handsome guy? The top scholar's father's eyes are so sharp. Through the original poster's high-resolution lens, I can feel that the senior is so handsome. But isn't our school hunk Cheng Zihuai? But the looks of the top scholar's father directly beat all the boys in the school. Crying face, what do you mean upstairs? This is too much. Although the upstairs' words are very hurtful, he is indeed so handsome. When I walked past him, the senior was so handsome that my heart raced. I forgot to secretly take photos. He's definitely not from our school. He might be a senior from Beichuan next door. I have to hurry and ask my best friend in Beichuan. However, the onlookers searched for an entire night, but they could not find this handsome senior on Beichuan University's forum. On the other side, as soon as Bei Yunj returned to the dormitory, Su Xianing was lying on the bed without a care for her image. Her face was oily as she played games. Come down and drink. Bei Yunj threw the plastic bag on the table. His tone was no different from calling a dog. Su Xianing did not mind. Daddy Pei, help me soak. Bei Yunj squinted at her. Is your hand broken? I'm playing games. Bei Yunj put down her backpack and tore open the packaging with one hand. She made ginger tea for Su Xianing and replied to Huashidu's message. Not long after. Out of the corner of her eye, Su Xianing saw a big bouquet of roses on Bei Yunj's table. A rose of such quality would probably be priceless. Su Xianing lowered her head and continued to play the game. However, she was muttering in her heart, guys nowadays are really willing to spend a lot of money to chase after goddesses. However, it was also the first time that Bei Yunj was willing to accept flowers. It was quite strange. However, Su Xianing did not expect that her roommate, who was so arrogant every day, would reject the temptation of a man just to come back and make ginger tea for her. After playing the game, Su Xianing browsed the forum and got out of bed to get the ginger tea. Only then did she see a post by Bei Yunj. A few minutes later, Su Xianing froze and slowly turned to look at Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj, did your boyfriend give you those roses? Chapter 1275. Bei Yunj paused for a moment before she glanced at her calmly and said slowly, what's the matter? Wasn't not denying it equivalent to admitting it? Su Xianing's emotions were complicated. Then where's your boyfriend? I asked him to go back. Doesn't he have to bring you ginger tea? Su Xianing suddenly felt like a green tea who had interfered in someone else's relationship. However, she did not expect that Bei Yunj would ask her boyfriend to go back just to bring her ginger tea. What kind of immortal roommate relationship was this? Your boyfriend didn't say anything? Su Xianing's tone was even more complicated. What should I say? Bei Yunj was playing with her phone. After asking the question, she finally regained her senses. She suddenly recalled the scene just now. She seemed to be a little jerk. Su Xianing flipped through the post and asked curiously for first-hand information. Bei Yunj, which university is your boyfriend from? Which year is he in? He graduated a long time ago. He's a student of Neely University. Bei Yunj's mind flashed across the Neely University trophy that old Madame Hua had left behind in the Hua family's old residence. Neely University? Damn, he's also a straight-A student. Su Xianing's eyes lit up with the flames of gossip. She immediately went to Neely University's forum to take a look. I reckon that with your boyfriend's looks, he's definitely the most handsome guy in Neely University. Don't be too concerned about him. Bei Yunj glanced at her lazily and smiled. He's mine. Su Xianing was speechless. So this was not a research big shot who had cut off her love. I have an engagement partner, okay? I'm just curious. Su Xianing raised her head proudly, but after flipping through the posts on Neely University's forum, she was shocked. Wait, Bei Yunj, what's your boyfriend's name? Su Xianing was so shocked that she was almost speechless. She had a feeling that that blurry back view resembled the young CEO of the Hua Corporation, Huashidu. Bei Yunj licked her lips. However, he's not considered my boyfriend. He's not your boyfriend? Bei Yunj, is it a waste that you have such a seductive face? After Su Xianing finished speaking, she grabbed Bei Yunj's hand and said, let's go. Charge. If you don't rush, someone will rush in front of you. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows. Why are you so excited? Aren't I worried for you? Look at your boyfriend's popularity. He has graduated for so many years, but there are still people who can't forget him. After that, Su Xianing handed the phone to Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj took the phone and looked up to see a picture of a man in his late teens. The angle of the photo was obviously a candid shot. The 18 or 19-year-old boy was wearing a refreshing white t-shirt and a black wristband on his wrist. His wet hair was swept back lazily after playing basketball. Through the photo, the boy's playful and lazy peach blossom eyes were electrifying. Compared to the current him, he was even more immature. His eyes were full of vigor, and his youthful aura made people unable to take their eyes off him. It was like an existence of light. Even if such a young man was just passing by, he could make an 18-year-old girl's heart flutter. Indeed, no matter what age or where this man was, he could easily seduce a young girl's soul. After being stunned for a moment, Bei Yunj scrolled down. They were all girls who had confessed to Huoshidu. From a few years ago until now, there were more than 10,000 posts. Perhaps to some people, the most unforgettable memory of Neely University was this man. Su Xianing was still nagging. To be honest, you have good taste. Such a man is the ideal of the world. Chapter 1276. But you're really something. You can even push such a man aside and not accept his temptation. Are you the female version of Liu Xiaohui? Su Xianing kept praising her when she realized that Bei Yunj was slowly looking up at her. The two of them suddenly looked at each other and the atmosphere fell silent. Su Xianing was speechless. Bei Yunj slowly closed the forum, not letting Su Xianing see it. She heard Pei Shishir say, "Student Su, it wasn't easy for us to cultivate such a small friendship. It's better for you to speak less." Su Xianing was speechless. After sleeping on the bed, with one hand behind her head, Bei Yunj casually opened Yun University's forum with her mind wandering. She happened to see the post that had secretly taken photos of her and Huoshidu. Although it was not taken clearly, it did not stop the girls from Yun University from being enthusiastic about Huoshidu. F***ck, he's so handsome in such a high-resolution photo that I'm speechless? I'm confident enough to call him hubby. I'm about to faint. Why is he so handsome? Thank you, my heart is racing. Cover mouth and cry. Isn't it just a matter of brother hooking his finger? Ha, sister above, calm down. Consider the feelings of the top scholar's father. I'm dying of laughter. The arts department is saying that Bei Yunj is sticking to Cheng Zihuai. I don't believe it. How blind must she be to give up on such a crazy man? Looking at the netizens on the forum begging for the same thing as her, Bei Yunj was speechless. A few minutes later, he had just changed into his sleeping robe when Huoshidu, who was working, suddenly received a message. He opened it and saw that it was a message from someone. Brother, don't come to my school next time. It's a little hurtful. Huoshidu was speechless. What was this child thinking all day long? The next day, Bei Yunj took the party score she had just written and was about to try it out with Song Yao. However, she did not expect to see a group of onlookers on the way. Some people were raising their phones high to take photos. It was obvious that they were joining in the fun. Bei Yunj was not interested. She was about to leave when she heard the boy shout. Song Yao. Ever since I met you, I can't fall in love with anyone else. Can I be your boyfriend? With that said, the boy knelt down on one knee and handed the flowers to Song Yao. Everyone around him was cheering. Promise him. Promise him. Song Yao's expression was not good. She pursed her lips and looked unhappy. The boy who openly confessed was the current president of the student union, Hu Ji. He was average-looking and slightly plump, but because he was liked by the teachers, there were many people who complimented him. I'm sorry, but I don't have any thoughts about relationships right now. Song Yao had just finished speaking when Qin Youjiao, who was wearing a black lace dress, laughed. Song Yao, why don't you agree first? It's not good to reject him in public. The sarcasm and gloating in Yu Ling's eyes could not be hidden anymore. Yes, Hu Ji's family is quite rich. Besides, he likes you so much. Song Yao, you should know what's good for you. As a female artiste, Song Yao was quite famous online. If she did not handle it well, Song Yao would definitely be the one scolded. I won't accept the flowers and I don't plan to accept the person either. Senior Hu, do you understand? Song Yao asked calmly. These words made Hu Ji's face turn red. Previously, he had even bragged to his friends that his family background was good and he would definitely be able to take Song Yao down. Anyway, I'm giving this to you. Since Song Yao did not agree, Hu Ji insisted. Chapter 1277. Song Yao was suddenly stuffed with a large bouquet of flowers and Hu Ji reached out to grab Song Yao's arm tightly. Looking at this scene, those who did not know would think that Song Yao had agreed. But in fact, Song Yao could not break free at all. Hu Ji let go. Song Yao's expression darkened. Song Yao, Hu Ji really likes you. Qin Youjiao smiled coquettishly. Don't be embarrassed. Only Qin Youjiao knew in her heart that she just couldn't stand these people who were close to Bei Yunj and was taking the opportunity to add insult to injury. Relying on his strength, Hu Ji pulled Song Yao's hand until it was red. He turned around and smiled at everyone. Thank you for your blessings. I can be with Song Yao, suddenly. Before he could finish speaking, Bei Yunj, who had walked over from behind, raised his leg and kicked Hu Ji's but ruthlessly without giving him any face. Hu Ji was caught off guard and fell to the ground in a disheveled state. He screamed. Song Yao had just turned around and before she could react, she heard Bei Yunj say calmly, but his voice was cold. Give me the flowers. Song Yao gave them to Bei Yunj instinctively. However, in the next second, Bei Yunj took the bouquet of flowers, grabbed Hu Ji's collar with one hand and slapped him. Classmate, do you know how long she has been with me? Did I agree to be with you? Bei Yunj slapped him twice and threw the flowers into the rubbish bin ruthlessly. The sound made the crowd who had been watching the commotion tremble in fear. The entire scene was out of control. Who else would dare to be so arrogant as to hit someone in Yun University? There were also people who filmed this scene. Hu Ji's expression did not look good. He felt that it was very embarrassing to be hit by a woman. He was about to do something when Bei Yunj suddenly punched him in the abdomen. Hu Ji's face twitched in pain. You're quite brave. Are you going to hit me? Bei Yunj laughed and slowly moved his joints. Bei Yunj, I'm the president of the student union. My father has a relationship with the Qin family. Before Hu Ji could finish his sentence, Bei Yunj grabbed him by the collar and dragged him straight to the fountain. Before he could finish speaking, Bei Yunj pressed Hu Ji's head with one hand and pushed his head into the fountain. Bei Yunj only pulled Hu Ji up after he choked until he was trembling all over. Who's your father? Say it again. Bei Yunj asked slowly. At this moment, Hu Ji's expression was one of terror as he shook his head frantically. Very good. Bei Yunj nodded. Then he grabbed the drenched Hu Ji and threw him directly in front of Yuling. Yuling was so scared that she screamed. I didn't agree. Song Yao can't be with anyone she wants. But since Yuling loves him so much, why don't they just get together? Bei Yunj's question made Yuling's face turn pale. Then Bei Yunj continued to look at Qin Youjiao. Or our classmate Qin Youjiao. Qin Youjiao smiled with a pale face. Bei Yunj, don't joke around. What's there to be embarrassed about? Bei Yunj said cynically, it's not good to reject him in public. My Tian can't agree to him. Why don't student Qin be kind? Qin Youjiao's face was livid. She knew that Bei Yunj was using her words just now to shut her up. Or if student Qin Youjiao isn't willing, why don't you join the crowd just now? Bei Yunj grabbed Hu Ji's collar and questioned them one by one. Then he sneered. What? Weren't they all living bodhisattvas who crawled out of the temple just now? Is it your turn to be unhappy? Chapter 1278. Seeing this, the others dispelled the thought of using the same method to woo their goddess. Bei Yunj licked the corner of his lips and chuckled softly. He slowly glanced at the others. Is there anyone else who likes my Tian? She's busy, so you don't have to ask her in the future. You can just ask me. However, when everyone thought of the scene of Bei Yunj hitting someone just now, they felt a chill run down their spines. Who the F***ck would dare to pursue Song Yao? Yunj? Song Yao's long eyelashes fluttered before she walked in front of Bei Yunj. At first, everyone thought that Song Yao would comfort Bei Yunj and persuade them to stop the fight. However, they did not expect Song Yao to hand them a handkerchief. She frowned and said, wipe yourself first. You're all wet. Everyone was speechless. Sister Yao, wake up. Was she treating the purebred devil as a little puppy? Bei Yunj wiped himself twice before his eyes landed on Hu Ji carelessly, looking at him with a faint smile. Bei Yunj's smile was unbelievably beautiful, but everyone present shivered. Hu Ji's legs almost turned to jelly and he ran away when no one was paying attention. At this moment, not far away, Lu Yuanxi saw a group of people gathered outside. In the middle of them was Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj, what are you doing? Where's the proposal? Bei Yunj was speechless. Song Yao was speechless. Lu Yuanxi looked up and saw that the person beside him was Song Yao. He suddenly felt the strange gazes around him. I'm joking. Lu Yuanxi's smile froze as he explained, but to the others, it felt like he was trying to hide something. I finished writing the score. Come and listen to it. See if there's anything that needs to be changed. With that said, Lu Yuanxi and Song Yao's eyelids twitched. They looked at each other, feeling a little helpless at the big boss's confidence. What should they say later so that it wouldn't hurt the big boss's heart? Hearing this, a trace of ridicule flashed past Qin Youjiao's eyes as she stared at Bei Yunj's departing figure. An original score? Bei Yunj, since you like to compete with me so much, Let's see how long you can be arrogant for. In the rehearsal hall. After Bei Yunji handed the score to Lu Yuanxi and Song Yao, their eyes flickered and they refused to open her score. She was silent for a moment and looked at the two with a faint smile. What do you mean? Do you think my music score is bad? Lu Yuanxi, no, Master Pei, you're omnipotent. Why would I think that? However, Master Pei, the gala this time is more important. Why don't we change the score? Before he could finish his sentence, Song Yao interrupted her. Let's try Yunji's score first. Lu Yuanxi turned back to look at Song Yao. Sister Yao, aren't you indulging Bei Yunji too much? Who knew what Bei Yunji could write? She still wanted to give it a try. Then I'll play a part for you guys to listen to. With that said, Bei Yunji sat in front of the piano, her slender and good-looking fingers dancing on the black and white keys. When the first part of the piano sounded, Lu Yuanxi and Song Yao were stunned and instinctively looked at the person playing the piano. What was going on? Did Bei Yunji really know how to arrange music? Although they did not know how to arrange music, listening to this piece of music, they knew that Bei Yunji's style was mature and even higher than those people from the International Musicians Association. Until the entire song ended. Bei Yunji then said slowly, I don't have much time recently, so I changed the old song I wrote previously and added some new things. If you don't like it, I'll release another version in the next 2 days. Chapter 1279. Wait a minute, did you write this yourself? After Lu Yuanxi regained his senses, he asked in disbelief. Bei Yunji turned around and smiled. Brother Lu, do you not understand human language after studying in university? Lu Yuanxi was speechless. It was not easy for him to maintain this friendship. Suddenly, Song Yao said, I think it's very nice. Why don't we try it? Okay. Bei Yunji nodded and sat in front of the piano to teach Song Yao slowly. Not long after, Lu Yuanxi looked at Bei Yunji and Song Yao playing together and felt that he was the extra one on the field. Lu Yuanxi turned around expressionlessly and started to play the violin in front of the score. After the three of them finished their training and left, someone sneaked into the training hall and looked around before taking the tape recorder that had been prepared in the corner. How is it? Did you get Bei Yunji's score? Qin Youjiao could not hide the darkness in her eyes. She still wanted to ensure that nothing would go wrong with this performance. Yu Ling handed the USB flash drive to Qin Youjiao and played with her hair as she raised her chin. I just got someone to record it. Listen to it. A trace of disdain flashed past Qin Youjiao's eyes. Of course, she knew that Yu Ling ordered her pursuers around all day long. She was clearly dating Fu Yanbai, but she declared to the public that she was not in a relationship. Qin Youjiao hid her surprise and took it to listen to the source of the music. However, a few minutes later, Qin Youjiao's face darkened. Qin Youjiao knew that Bei Yunji probably knew how to arrange music, but she did not take it seriously. After all, she had stayed abroad for more than a year in the International Musicians Association and studied day and night every day. Her ability should be better than Bei Yunji's. Therefore, she never thought that Bei Yunji's work could be compared to hers. However, at this moment, the truth was thrown ruthlessly in her face, making her heart tremble and filled with pain and hatred. How was this possible? What right did she have? Bei Yunji used to be so uneasy that her hands would tremble when playing the piano, but now she was playing the score she wrote and crushing her effortlessly? Is this the score written by Bei Yunji? Qin Youjiao asked through gritted teeth. Yu Ling didn't look too good either. However, before Yu Ling could speak, someone at the door suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Youjiao, who wrote this score? The person who spoke was a famous professor in Qin Youjiao's department. He was also one of the few members of the musical alliance in the country. Qin Youjiao's expression turned ugly. She did not expect her professor to overhear her. She pursed her lips and said, a friend of mine. Your friend? Was he old? The level of this score doesn't sound like something your peers could have written. The professor's words were like a slap that landed ruthlessly on Qin Youjiao's face. Yu Ling furrowed her eyebrows. She did not expect Qin Youjiao to not even have this ability. She couldn't even compete with Bei Yunji. But why do I feel that this song sounds familiar? Yu Ling's casual words made Qin Youjiao extremely agitated. She turned around abruptly. What did you say? Have you heard of it somewhere before? Yu Ling was shocked before she said slowly, I think it's a female singer who has been quite popular recently. The popularity of her new song is almost comparable to Yu Manrin's. Your friend copied such a good song? The professor frowned as a layer of coldness and disgust appeared in his eyes. However, Qin Yojiao could not suppress her excitement and started to investigate the singer Yu Ling was talking about. P.S. Continue reading in the morning. Chapter 1280. The singer Yu Ling was talking about was called Fang Shiyun. She was an artiste who had suddenly become popular in the past 6 months. Coincidentally, Qin Yojiao also knew Fang Shiyun. This was her junior from the music class. Qin Yojiao's expression changed slightly, feeling very surprised and upset. She remembered that Fang Shiyun did not have any musical talent at all and was the least outstanding one in the music class. She was just a little pretty. But it had only been a few years since they last met. How could Fang Shiyun write such a song? How is it? Isn't it very similar? Yu Ling asked Qin Yojiao. However, the professor frowned. Yojiao, no matter who your friend is, you should remind her early not to do such a thing. At such a young age, do you really have to ruin your reputation and ruin your reputation? Qin Yojiao immediately laughed. Professor, don't worry. I'll tell her. The professor nodded. Ever since he found out that such a perfect score was actually plagiarized, his expression had also darkened. Young people nowadays were really too ambitious. However, after Qin Yojiao left, Yu Ling could not suppress her excitement as she said, since Bei Yunj plagiarized, why don't we expose her now? She couldn't wait to see Pei Yunj and Song Yao being hated by everyone like rats on the street. Yu Ling's eyes were filled with unwillingness and resentment. Ever since she returned, Fu Yanbai had not treated her as well as before. A few days ago, she had even found a 1-inch photo of Song Yao in Fu Yanbai's book. This made Yu Ling feel a sense of danger. Fu Yanbai already felt guilty towards Song Yao, and now he was clearly even more interested in Song Yao. She would never allow Song Yao, who had once been trampled under her feet, to turn around and win against her. Hearing this, a cold smile appeared in Qin Yojiao's eyes as she glanced at Yu Ling. She really did not know how Fu Yanbai took a fancy to such an idiot. There's no hurry. Qin Yojiao put away the USB drive and said calmly. What do you mean there's no hurry? Don't you want Bei Yunj's reputation to be ruined? Yu Ling frowned. Qin Yojiao's tone was mocking. How is exposing her now considered ruining her reputation? She laughed, the coldness and malice in her eyes intertwined. Just watch. On the day of the banquet, let's see how Bei Yunj will be humiliated. This time she would definitely avenge herself. For several days in a row, Bei Yunj stayed in the laboratory and occasionally went to watch Song Yao and Lu Yuanxi rehearse. I'll wait for you at the door. When Bei Yunj saw Huashidu's message, it was already half an hour later. Yunj, look at this data. Before Si Qingyan could finish speaking, Pei Yunj suddenly took off her white coat. She only said a few words before she ran away in a hurry. Something came up, Brother Yen. You play by yourself. Si Qingyan, who was watching Bei Yunj leave, was speechless. What do you mean by play? Wasn't he looking down on his project too much? However, Si Qingyan was also very curious. Who had Bei Yunj received a message from? She actually left so quickly. When she ran downstairs, Bei Yunj's breathing was slightly chaotic and a small tuft of her short hair stood up messily. Before she could take off her mask and look around for the man's back, someone suddenly grabbed her hand around the corner. Before Bei Yunj could react, she was grabbed by the waist and pressed behind the corner. The moment she looked up, her eyes met with the man's smiling upturned eyes. They were very charming. Why are you here? Before Bei Yunj could go out, she was pulled back. End of this chapter. Chapter 1281. Bei Yunj bumped straight back into the man's chest. What are you doing? Bei Yunj's eyelids twitched as she looked up at the man with a sloppy expression. Didn't Yun not allow me to appear in school? The man tidied Bei Yunj's messy hair with one hand. Suddenly, he leaned over casually and smiled frivolously. Bei Yunj suddenly felt that Huashidu was holding her hand. The atmosphere and the other party's body temperature made her feel a secret intimacy and excitement. It made her inexplicably happy and her heart beat faster. She crossed her fingers ambiguously. Then do you want to have a secret affair with brother? Bei Yunj met the man's gaze, but it was as if she was scalded by his gaze. She quickly looked away. Her heart was beating like a drum. Huashidu also felt that he had teased her too much just now. As a result, the child with red ears beside him walked without looking up. He did not even look at him. But suddenly, there were more discussions around them. Is this a senior from our school? He's too handsome. Isn't this Bei Yunj from the physics department? Could it be that this little brother is the senior from Beichuan who was photographed with Bei Yunj last time? Impossible. Beichuan isn't that handsome, okay? Then, is this the boyfriend of the top scorer's father? The people around them were discussing animatedly. There were also little girls whose eyes were sparkling, looking eager to try. Bei Yunj pursed her red lips unconsciously. Before the others could react, she grabbed the man's hand and walked forward quickly. Huashidu raised his eyebrows and curled his thin red lips. Yinyun, be gentler to me. As soon as he finished speaking, the girls around them could not hold back their excitement and almost screamed softly. This was too suave. Bei Yunj, was this D*Emin man selling his smile? In public he was seducing people just because he was good-looking? Huashidu still did not know that his child had been unhappy for a long time because of his pair of naturally affectionate peach blossom eyes. At this moment, the others also realized that the big boss of the physics department was declaring his sovereignty, and the people around him were no longer infatuated. However, she inexplicably felt that the way this big boss expressionlessly held the man's hand was a natural contrast adorable. Even the boss has a proud moment? However, not long after, when Bei Yunj was holding the man's hand, she suddenly saw a familiar middle-aged man in front of them. But she seemed to have never seen it before. 2 minutes later, Bei Yunj suddenly realized from the original protagonist's memory that this was Qing Zihuai's father. Bei Yunj didn't know if it was because the original owner's consciousness was still there, but she subconsciously froze. Although Qing Zihuai's mother hated Bei Yunj and schemed against Bei Yunj with Qin Youjiao, Qing Zihuai's father treated Bei Yunj as his biological daughter. Even the marriage between the original owner and Qing Zihuai was facilitated by Father Cheng. Therefore, in front of Father Qing, Bei Yunj actually felt guilty for eloping with someone. Beside her, Huashidu also felt that something was wrong with Bei Yunj. What's wrong? Bei Yunj said, the person in front is Qing Zihuai's father. Hearing this, the corners of Huashidu's lazy upturned eyes raised slightly as his gaze landed on Bei Yunj calmly. He remembered that this child had been engaged to the Cheng family before. Seeing Bei Yunj's guilty expression, the man licked his thin red lips and snorted silently. Then, Bei Yunj saw Father Cheng walking over and turned to leave instinctively. Chapter 1282. However, just as Bei Yunj pulled Huashidu back, the man pulled Bei Yunj back without moving. Hence, Bei Yunj bumped into the man out of habit. In front of Mr. Cheng, she held Huashidu's hand and pressed her face against his chest. Just like that, the atmosphere turned cold and they looked at each other subtly. However, Huashidu even reached out and scrupulously and touched Bei Yunj's head. His lazy voice was lowered and there was a hint of mockery in it. Don't you like the ice cream at the school gate? Brother wants to have a bite, but Yunyun won't let him. Bei Yunj, did Huashidu, this D*Emin man, take the wrong medicine? Mr. Cheng stiffened for a moment before he slowly smiled and said, a long time no see. Some time ago, I heard that girl was the top scorer in the country. I haven't had the chance to congratulate you properly. Uncle Cheng. Bei Yunj nodded and her lips curled up. She avoided Mr. Cheng not because of anything else, but because she did not know how to face this elder who doted on her. After all, she was not the original owner of the body. This is... Mr. Cheng looked at Huashidu and found him familiar. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and his eyes widened unconsciously. You're President Hua? President Cheng, you're too polite. Huashidu was still holding Bei Yunj's hand and pulling her closer to him. Mr. Cheng naturally felt that Huashidu and Bei Yunj's relationship was not ordinary. Mr. Cheng was silent for a moment before he sighed and looked at Bei Yunj with a smile. That's good too. About the engagement. I've let you down. Zihuai didn't get to be with you because he didn't have the fortune. Hearing this, the man's gaze swept over Father Cheng indifferently. Bei Yunj smiled. Uncle Cheng, you don't have to say that. Thank you for taking care of me in the past. At that time, I was still too insensible and didn't know what love was. I've troubled the two families to worry about me. As soon as she finished speaking, Huashidu's eyes, which had just darkened, instantly disappeared. The corners of his lips unconsciously curled up. When no one was looking, he rubbed his index finger against Bei Yunj's palm ambiguously. Bei Yunj's body froze instantly from the man's seduction. Her heart felt numb, but the tip of her ears slowly turned pink. Seeing this, the man chuckled subconsciously, attracting Mr. Cheng's father's attention. Mr. Cheng subconsciously lowered his head and saw the two of them holding hands. He immediately understood what was going on. Then I'll go look for Zihuai. Geez. Bei Yunj's father, Bei Yunj's. Bei Yunj nodded. All right. Of course she knew that Mr. Cheng must have seen through it. After father's left, why's Cheng Cheng's. Suddenly, Pei Yunj stood on tiptoes and asked with a smirk by his ear, "Don't you think what older brother did today is embarrassing?" When this D*MN man was flirtatious, he had no bottom line at all. However, the man laughed slowly and held the young lady's waist. He continued to tease her in a low voice. "It's my first time doing such a thing, so it's quite embarrassing. However, I'll get used to it a few more times." Bei Yunj? Was she encouraging him? A few more times to get used to it? Until the next moment, Bei Yunj seemed to have heard the man say slowly, "After all, how can I not put down my pride to woo my little girl?" Bei Yunj ate her strawberry ice cream. After a while, she could not help but turn to look at the man in the driver's seat. "Brother, I think I heard you say something just now." Chapter 1283. What did I say? The man looked straight ahead and asked in a casual tone. "Bei Yunj, did she hear wrongly?" Bei Yunj did not say anything and continued to eat her strawberry ice cream. The man glanced at the person beside him and even the corners of his seductive peach blossom eyes curled up slightly. After leaving school, Huashidu chose a restaurant to eat at according to Bei Yunj's preferences. However, not long after, Huashidu received a call. After hanging up, Bei Yunj glanced at him knowingly. "Brother, do you have something on later?" The man replied calmly. However, before Bei Yunj could react, she heard the man ask, "Do you want to go together?" Bei Yunj was slightly stunned. After all, Huashidu never liked to bring her to those drinking parties. She asked, "Didn't you never bring me there in the past?" "In the past, our union was still young." The man handed the fruit juice at the side to Bei Yunj and smiled slowly. "But now, our union has also grown up." Huashidu looked straight at her. "It's up to you whether you want to go or not." In the past, he had taken into account that she was still young and in high school and was afraid that she would not like such places. But now, he also wanted Bei Yunj to be closer to him. "Let's go take a look." Bei Yunj seemed to be scalded by the man's deep gaze and turned her head subconsciously. Huashidu slowly suppressed the smile on his lips. "Well, first. When we get there later, if you don't like it, I'll take you away first." At the golf course. Huashidu had just brought Bei Yunj in when he saw 6 to 7 men not far away. There were also a few beautiful girls around them who were smiling and chatting. However, when they saw Huashidu, a few men immediately surrounded him. "President Hua, I didn't expect you to come this time." Someone immediately flattered him, but when his gaze shifted to the unbelievably beautiful girl beside him, he could not help but be secretly amazed. No wonder he was the head of the whole corporation. Even the woman he brought with him could make the stars and models around him look ordinary in comparison. Compared to Pei Yunj, those glamorous female artistes on television indeed had stiff faces and were as calm as water. It happens to be nearby. The moment Huashidu spoke, he attracted the attention of those women. There were also people who were secretly sizing up Bei Yunj. But the next moment? Very hot. Huashidu saw that Bei Yunj was frowning because of the glaring light and used his hand to shield Bei Yunj from the sun. Bei Yunj narrowed her beautiful eyes and simply responded, as if she was used to the man's thoughtful service. This scene caused everyone to fall silent. Since when did the master of the whole corporation show such tenderness towards women? Wasn't Master Du too fond of this girl? He actually spoiled her to this extent? However, looking at Bei Yunj's face, they probably couldn't bear to see such a beauty exposed to the sun. "Is this lady your friend, Master Du?" someone asked with a smile. Huashidu's gaze landed on Bei Yunj casually, but he laughed softly. "She's the ancestor of the family." Hearing Huashidu's words, everyone looked at Bei Yunj with even more shock and complicated expressions. Especially the few women beside her. They had relied on the men beside them to obtain their current status. Therefore, when they first saw Bei Yunj, they naturally thought that they were people of the same status. But now, they realized that their status was worlds apart. Chapter 1284. Master Du hasn't been here for a long time. Why don't we have a meal together this time? Someone asked with a smile. I just picked her up from school. I was afraid that she would be hungry, so I already ate. The man's tone was light and natural. His words attracted the envy of many people. Master Du was different from others. Be it in terms of looks or ability, he was a perfect match that women would go crazy for. Many women wanted to use this man to climb up the social ladder, but who would dare to pluck this unattainable flower? The other women looked at Bei Yunj with indignation in their eyes. How could a little girl who was still in university have the right to pull a man like President Hu down from his pedestal? Not long after. Suddenly, a delicate and pretty girl with youthful eyes was pushed out. Under everyone's gaze, the girl believed the other women's words and nervously reached out her hand to Bei Yunj. "Hello, I'm Chen Xiao." As soon as she finished speaking, the young man who brought Chen Xiao over had a dark expression. The other women couldn't help but laugh sarcastically behind them. What a fool. She actually believed them. Shaking hands with the girl beside Master Du was the rule. Anyone with a little experience in society should know that in such a drinking party, there was a huge difference in status between a female companion and a girlfriend. Chen Xiao shaking hands with the girl was actually a form of humiliation to the girl. The other women gloated and wanted to see how ugly Bei Yunj's expression would become. But in the next moment, Bei Yunj glanced at her indifferently. Not long after, she actually reached out and gently shook Chen Xiao's hand. "Hello, Bei Yunj." This instantly made the sarcastic expressions on the other women's faces freeze. Chen Xiao instinctively looked up and accidentally met Bei Yunj's eyes. For a long time she forgot to let go. Until the man in a white suit beside her reminded her with a sullen expression. "Chen Xiao." Chen Xiao snapped back to her senses and immediately let go of her hand. However, her face was slightly red. "Go and change your clothes first. I have something to discuss." Washidu didn't look at the others. He just lowered his head and whispered into Bei Yunj's ear, "Can you play here by yourself later?" "Okay, go ahead." Bei Yunj nodded. Washidu smirked and stood behind Bei Yunj again. He bit his hair tie and casually pulled up her long hair with his well-defined hand. Not long after, he tied Bei Yunj's hair into a simple ponytail. "I'll pick you up when you're done. Call me if you need anything." "Yes." The surrounding people did not dare to say anything when they saw Washidu skillfully braiding the little girl's hair. Is this person still Master Du? Especially for the women who were watching this scene, it was impossible for them not to be envious. However, after Washidu left, no one was willing to chat with Bei Yunj. Some were timid and some were ostracized. "You play really well." Only Chen Xiao supported Bei Yunj unnaturally. "You'll get used to it after a while." Bei Yunj glanced at Chen Xiao. Seeing that Chen Xiao was hesitant, she said, "Do you want me to teach you?" "Really?" Chen Xiao's eyes lit up. Beside the parasol. "That female university student is really playing with Chen Xiao." Someone sneered. "Chen Xiao is also a female university student, right? No wonder they can play together." "Shiyun, don't you think so?" Another woman said to Fang Shiyun in a flattering tone. Fang Shiyun was a singer who had just become popular this year. Now she was considered a B-list singer. In addition, she had resources behind her. It was said that she had even snatched a few resources from Yu Manran. Chapter 1285. That was why these women tried their best to please Fang Shiyun. However, there was actually another important reason. Fang Shiyun was a typical example of a mistress who was just one step away from marrying into a wealthy family. Back then, when Fang Shiyun was still a C-list celebrity, she was unknown for 7 to 8 years. However, after currying favor with the CEO of Xingsha Media, she started to receive resources. Recently, she had become popular with her self-composed song, "Kissing You on a Rainy Day," and was titled as the talented girl of the music industry. It was also because of Fang Shiyun's popularity that the CEO and his wife of Xingsha Media were divorcing and their relationship was exposed. On the other hand, Fang Shiyun was an intruder. Because she shed 2 drops of tears in front of the camera, her fanatical fans started to curse the original wife crazily. As for the original wife, she had once accompanied her husband to start from scratch, but in the end, her reputation was ruined by the divorce. The woman holding the bottle of mineral water looked much more exquisite than the others. After glancing at Bei Yunj, she said casually, "Don't be mistaken. The Huo family is not like other prestigious families. In Yunqing, other than the Huo family, who else can do whatever they want?" She was giving the others a warning. Bei Yunj, a young female university student, wanted to marry into the Huo family. It was simply wishful thinking. The others immediately sobered up. Yeah, if she's really the future young madam of the Huo family, Master Du might not bring her here, right? The eyes of the others lit up instantly. However, when they thought of Bei Yunj's excessively beautiful face, they instantly dispelled their evil thoughts that were full of fighting spirit. Even if Master Du wanted to choose a woman, it would not be their turn. In the changing room. "Yunj, which school are you from?" Qian Xiao felt that Bei Yunji's temper was not as bad as she imagined, so she started to become bold. Yun University. Yun University? Qian Xiao was so shocked that her voice was raised. It was her first time seeing a living top student. Then your college entrance examination results were very good, right? Bei Yunji thought for a moment and said slowly, "It's all right." Hearing this, Qian Xiao thought that Bei Yunji's results were the highest in Yun University. That's good too. With my brain, I might not even be able to get into Yun University in 3 years. After Qian Xiao comforted her, Bei Yunji stopped washing her hands. Then, she turned around and saw Bei Yunji looking at her with a complicated expression. Qian Xiao, this pitiful and complicated gaze, why did it make her feel like she was retarded? Not long after, Qian Xiao was called away by a phone call. Bei Yunji took a shower and changed her clothes. When she went out, she saw Fang Shiyun wearing a low-cut black dress. There was a faint smell of cigarettes around her. How long has Miss Pei been with Master Du? Fang Shiyun asked. Bei Yunji glanced at her indifferently and casually brushed her black hair in front of the mirror. Miss, you smoke too? Bei Yunji looked at her lazily. Fang Shiyun's smile stiffened. Her public image was that of a pure flower. If the matter of her smoking was magnified, it would definitely have a negative impact. Miss Pei, aren't you being too nosy? Fang Shiyun coldly asked. You also know that there's a lot to do. Bei Yunji laughed softly. Only then did Fang Shiyun realize that Bei Yunji had asked this question on purpose. Her face instantly turned pale. She glared at Bei Yunji and pursed her lips. Miss Pei, do you mind people knowing about your relationship with Master Du? Bei Yunji suddenly turned around and looked at her for a while. She licked her red lips, tilted her head and raised her eyebrows. Her words were full of lust. Miss Pei, are you interested in doing something you like? Chapter 1286. Hearing this, Fang Shiyun's face turned red and green. She did not expect Bei Yunji to dare to say anything to outsiders. You. Bei Yunji happened to glance at the new score written by Shiyun on the table and raised her eyebrows with interest. She remembered that Qian Xiao had told her just now that there was a very famous singer among those women. However, a very famous singer's creative standards were quite surprising. At least in Bei Yunji's opinion, not to mention the talented Qin Yu, even Yu Manren's creative standards could beat this person a few times. However, Fang Shiyun saw that Bei Yunji had just looked at her score. She laughed coldly and her tone was a little impatient and arrogant. Miss Pei, you can't understand this thing either. It's better not to sweep it around. During this period of time, her management company had forced her to release new songs, so she had no choice but to bring a score with her. However, the thing she wrote could not compare to the previous song, Kissing You on a Rainy Day. Fang Shiyun pursed her lips, her eyes dark and indignant. I heard that Miss Fang is quite famous. I'm also quite curious how Miss Fang did it. Bei Yunji looked at her with a faint smile and asked, but it instantly hit Fang Shiyun's sore spot. What do you know? How dare you spout nonsense here? Fang Shiyun's voice suddenly became sharp. However, Fang Shiyun knew better than anyone that her famous work, Kissing You on a Rainy Day, was pieced together by borrowing the melody of Yun's Spring Night Banquet. Fang Shiyun also relied on the fact that Yun had few fans in the country and that the boundary against plagiarism in the country was not clear, so she dared to do this openly. However, she had also been scolded by Yu Manren because of this matter. Fortunately, the company stepped in and resolved this matter. After all, Fang Shiyun was already famous. How could the company bear to give up this money tree? However, this was still Fang Shiyun's sore spot. She could not bear to hear others doubt her like this. Really? Miss Fang's arrangements have always liked to use elements to pile up? Bei Yunji sneered and asked leisurely, but Fang Shiyun froze. Her face turned slightly pale and she felt guilty. This was because her arrangements had always been mediocre. There was nothing special about them. They were like the products of an assembly line. Therefore, this time, in order to imitate Yun's style, she accumulated a lot of elements. However, the final effect was to draw a tiger but end up like a dog. Only a bunch of messy and noisy noises came out. Fang Shiyun was afraid that Bei Yunji would discover something wrong and ruin her career. Fortunately, Bei Yunji didn't care about her at all. She just sneered and turned to leave. Fang Shiyun looked at Bei Yunji's back as he left and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. But the sudden ringing of the phone startled Fang Shiyun. Damn it. Fang Shiyun was blaming herself for calling at this time, but when she saw that the caller ID was Qin Youjiao, she was surprised. This young lady actually took the initiative to look for her? Evening. Bei Yunj had just gone to look for Hua Shidu when she saw Chen Xiao and the rest frowning at the entrance of the restaurant. What are you doing here? Bei Yunj glanced at them. Chen Xiao bit her lip and said with a dark expression, I chose a restaurant for my husband. I wanted to invite everyone to a meal, but I didn't expect. During this period of time, there are other requirements for the opening of this restaurant. What requirements? Bei Yunj asked. Chen Xiao said, the ranking of the college entrance examination scores. Bei Yunj was speechless. What kind of messy restaurant was this? Chapter 1287. Before Bei Yunj could come back to her senses, she heard a rich young master say angrily, this is King blatant discrimination against bad students. If your restaurant is so powerful, why don't you bring the entire family of the college entrance examination top scorer here? Bei Yunj turned around and looked around. She raised her eyebrows slowly. Where's my master Du? Chen Xiao said, he seems to have something on. He's answering a call outside. Then let's wait for him. Bei Yunj was interested. She also wanted to know how many points Hua Shidu had scored in the college entrance examination. The people beside her could roughly guess Bei Yunj's intentions. Someone reminded Bei Yunj softly, Master Du skipped grades and went to high school back then. He was eligible for admission in his second year. But after that, he went to Neely University and did not take the college entrance examination. Bei Yunj was speechless. Was this person cheating all the way? Bei Yunj glanced at the restaurant. It looked quite high-end and elegant. She did not know why they held such a strange event. How many points do we need to go in and eat? Bei Yunj turned around and asked. Chen Xiao smiled like a bad student and said with difficulty, you can't order food below 400 points. You can eat on the first floor if you score more than 450 points. You can book a private room if you score 550 points. You can eat on the second floor if you score 600 points. You can eat on the third floor if you score 650 points. You can eat on the fourth floor if you score 670 points. The top 10 of the national ranking can enter the top floor. Bei Yunj was silent for a moment. You can't eat? Chen Xiao's expression was complicated. I'm 549 points. Bei Yunj was speechless. She happened to be stuck and could not book a private room. Bei Yunj was silent for a moment. Just as she was about to speak, Fang Shiyun suddenly twisted her waist and stroked her hair flirtatiously as she walked over. Let me do it. After Fang Shiyun finished speaking, she walked confidently to the front hall and logged into the website to check her previous college entrance examination results. The staff's eyes were filled with shock. Miss Fang, you scored 657 points in the college entrance examination back then? I didn't expect you to be a top student. I performed abnormally back then. My original goal was the music department of Yun University in Beichuan. Fang Shiyun smiled and happened to see Hua Shidu walking in. A glint flashed across her eyes and her tone suddenly became gentle. I can only bring everyone to the third floor. I hope everyone doesn't mind. 657 points, I wouldn't even dare to get this much in my dreams? The girl pretended to be surprised, but in her heart, she wanted to embarrass the two female university students present. Chen Xiao subconsciously turned to look at Bei Yunj. As expected, she saw that Bei Yunj was still looking at the girl who had just spoken with a complicated expression. Chen Xiao felt like he was looking at an idiot. Then President Hua, do you mind if we go to the third floor for dinner? The person next to him asked tentatively. Hua Shidu glanced at his watch and said lightly, it's too late. I have to send my girl back to school. After that, suddenly a fearless woman said, may I know which school Miss Pei is from? The person beside Master Du should also be a top student, right? Hearing this, the faces of the men who had gathered here to curry favor with Master Du instantly turned ugly. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Did these women have any brains at all? Why did they have to provoke Master Du at this time? That's right, Yun University isn't far from here. It looks like Miss Pei is from Yun University, right? Someone continued to add fuel to the fire. This made Chen Xiao frown and he was about to explain to everyone. Who knew? Suddenly, a boy from Yun University's physics department came down with a few takeout boxes. When he saw Bei Yunj, his face was filled with joy and surprise. However, when he saw the dozen people beside Bei Yunj, he couldn't help but say, Yo, Master Pei, did you move your entire family here to dine and dash? That's too ruthless. P.S. I'm cheering everyone on behalf of Master Pei. Don't be nervous about the college entrance examination tomorrow. Do well, children. Put down your phone and sleep early. Chapter 1288. Bei Yunj was speechless. This restaurant is really too much. Why isn't it closer to Yun University? Otherwise I think the whole school would be here. The boy muttered to himself. When the others heard this, their expressions changed and they instinctively looked at Bei Yunj. This girl was really from Yun University? Master Pei, their king crab is Ju's on. Hurry up and go. I'll go back to school first. With that, the boy ran away with the takeout box, leaving the group of people behind in silence. Fang Shiyun and the others who had been slapped in the face had a colorful expression. Bei Yunj glanced at the counter and suddenly laughed lazily. All right, this meal is on me. With that said, Bei Yunj tugged at Huashidu's sleeve and looked up at him. Then she walked to the front desk and pulled down her mask. She lowered her voice and said, "Hello, I'd like to book a private room." The lady at the front desk was stunned by Bei Yunj's face, but the next moment she quickly smiled and said, "Miss, you can log into the website to check your college entrance examination results. Recently, if you want to book a private room in our restaurant, you need to have a college entrance examination score of 550 and above." Bei Yunj's slender and beautiful fingers tapped on the keyboard a few times and entered her personal information. Soon, the college entrance examination score page popped up. The lady at the front desk lowered her head and looked carefully. Her entire body froze. She even suspected that there was something wrong with the machine. The lady at the front desk immediately regained her professional smile and bowed slightly to Bei Yunj. "I'll book a VIP private room for you immediately. All drinks and food are free. I wish you a happy meal." Qian Xiao, who was not far away, was in disbelief when she heard this. VIP private room? All drinks and food are free? What kind of treatment is this? Even Fang Shiyun's expression froze. How many college entrance examination scores were there to receive such treatment? Qian Xiao was curious. Just as she was about to walk over to take a look, a line of words suddenly appeared on the big screen. Then a voice sounded, "Welcome, XX24 College Entrance Examination Top Scholar Pei XX to our restaurant. It's our honor. We wish you a happy meal." There was even a line of clear words below. National ranking, first place. Total score, 749. Instantly, the entire restaurant was in an uproar. F*CK, is this the top scorer of this year's college entrance examination? The legendary prodigy himself? Isn't this year's top scholar film Emperor Qin and Almighty Qin's sister? This year's top scorer is the most King Ferocious. He actually got 749 on such a difficult test. Don't talk about it. The principal of Hengda High School said that the father of the top scorer of the college entrance examination was still having a high fever and wasn't in a good state. Is he still human? His condition wasn't good, so he only got 749 points? The waiter almost blurted out top scorer's father, but he quickly corrected himself. "Miss Pei, please follow me to the top floor." "Thank you." Bei Yunj nodded. Huashidu looked at the little girl beside him and couldn't help but smile. Bei Yunj asked subconsciously when she saw the man smiling. "What are you laughing at?" The man scratched her chin lightly. The corners of his peach blossom eyes were seductive. His low and sexy laughter rippled. "Our Yun did very well. She's much better than brother." Bei Yunj's eyes flickered slightly. All along, Bei Yunj didn't think that she was very good. In her previous life, Ming Liang had never been stingy with praising her. It was as if geniuses should be better than others. Later on, Bei Yunj gradually thought so too. Until today. Someone would bend down and tell her gently that she had done a good job. Chapter 1289. After Bei Yunj regained her senses, she instinctively lowered the brim of her cap. Her tone was not cold. Coaxing a child? The man went along with her words and held back his laughter. "Do you dislike it that much? Is your brother's coaxing skills that bad?" Bei Yunj was about to say something when she paused. The next moment, the man moved closer to her ear. His usual lazy tone was a little more intimate. "But your brother only has one child at home. Yun, can you be more tolerant? You'll be able to coax my child in the future." Bei Yunja's long eyelashes fluttered. She was about to say something when she realized that everyone was staring at them. The man's expression was normal. He was unscrupulous in front of everyone. Bei Yunj was even more expressionless. This man was shameless. At this moment, the people who followed Bei Yunj upstairs had mixed feelings. Who would have thought that the beautiful girl next to Master Du was actually this year's college entrance examination top scorer? This was simply too surreal. The college entrance examination top scorer actually looked like this. Especially Fang Shiyun. Her face was stiff and her expression was extremely ugly. Especially when she thought about how she had confidently told everyone that she had failed the college entrance examination back then and had almost been admitted to Yun University. In the end, when they looked back, Bei Yunj was this year's college entrance examination top scorer. It was probably the first time that everyone present had seen the college entrance examination top scorer. Someone laughed dryly. I didn't expect Miss Pei to be so young and promising. You must be very busy with your studies, right? It's all right. It's quite simple. Bei Yunj's casual words made everyone present not dare to continue. Was this the confidence of a big boss? How could Yun University have such a simple major? Qian Xiao tugged at Bei Yunj's sleeve. Bei Yunj, what's your major? Physics. After Bei Yunj finished speaking, everyone looked at Bei Yunj as if they were looking at a living god. Master Du was indeed worthy. He could unearth a treasure with just one dig. However, Fang Shiyun and the others who saw the people on the scene constantly flattering Bei Yunj were already laughing so hard that they could barely raise their heads. It wasn't until the end of the meal that they secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Compared to competing with other women, they were more afraid of this kind of studious big boss. Soon. Until the end of the dinner. Looking at the backs of Bei Yunj and Wang Yao as they left, Fang Shiyun's group of sisters changed their tune. I really didn't expect that the person Master Du brought along was actually the top scorer of the college entrance examination. That's too amazing. A straight A student is a straight A student. Anyway, I can't afford to offend him. Suddenly someone changed the topic. Oh right, Shiyun, I still have something to do. I won't be going to your party this time. And me? These women were clearly afraid that Bei Yunj would deal with Fang Shiyun behind her back, so they wanted to see the situation first. And Fang Shiyun looked at these women who used to hold her every day, and actually started to treat her with this attitude. Her face instantly sank. In the car. However, Fang Shiyun's eyes flashed and she immediately called Qin Youjiao. Youjiao, who did you say plagiarized my song in your school? Qin Youjiao stood up from the piano. It's Bei Yunj from the physics department. What's wrong? I saw her today, but are you sure it's okay for me to do this? Fang Shiyun was unwilling to accept it, but she wanted to see with her own eyes how Bei Yunj fell from the clouds. However, she still had her rationality. The man beside Bei Yunj was Huashidu. P.S. The previous chapter has been modified. You can read it again. Chapter 1290. A glint flashed past Qin Youjiao's eyes before she laughed. What's wrong with that? Shiyun, as the victim, you're not the one who should be afraid. Bei Yunj has someone protecting her, but shouldn't they seal your mouth first to please you when such a thing happens? Fang Shiyun's eyes flashed and she was unconsciously tempted. She hated Bei Yunj the first time she saw her. It was only because she had succumbed to reality and accompanied an old man who was more than 20 years older than her for the sake of her career. On the other hand, Bei Yunj stood beside a man like Huashidu easily and was superior to him. How could she feel at ease? But if she could come into contact with an outstanding man like Huashidu? Okay, I promise you. Fang Shiyun gritted her teeth. After returning to school, Bei Yunj had only been idle for 2 days before she heard that the current principal and Bai Mingzhang had an argument. It was very ugly. However, when Bei Yunj knocked on the door of the principal's office, she realized that the current principal was just being scolded. Bai Mingzhang sat on the leather sofa with a dark expression. Until Bei Yunj glanced at the two of them and suddenly said, Principal Xiang. Hearing Bei Yunj's voice, Bai Mingzhang turned around and his anger subsided instantly. Yunj, why are you here? How does it feel to go to university? Are you happy? Are you busy with your studies? Bai Mingzhang seemed to have suddenly changed into a different person. His tone was loving and gentle. The corners of Principal Xiang's mouth twitched. He was speechless at the change in his teacher's expression. It's pretty good, Bei Yunj replied. After a moment of silence, she asked, Are you guys talking about something? Hearing that Bei Yunj had finally asked, Principal Xiang heaved a sigh of relief unconsciously and immediately said, It's like this, Yunj. There's a sudden infectious disease in the north of Continent K. Our seminar has unanimously decided that Director Lin is the most suitable person to go to our nation and cooperate with experts from all over the world. However, Director Lin might have some concerns. However, actually, we can resolve all of Director Lin's worries. Besides, Director Lin's return to scientific research will be helpful to your future. Principal Xiang felt that Bai Yunj would definitely be easier to persuade than Bai Mingzhang. But who knew, she said slowly, I don't need anyone to pave the way for my future. Principal Xiang, although these words were arrogant, when she thought about how Bai Yunj had completely defeated the graduate students of Neely University last month, she felt that it was very real. You're recommending him? Others might not know, but you old fogies don't know that Lan Jun almost lost her life because of the virus experiment. Moreover, because of that experiment, Director Lin also left behind a lot of roots of illness. Principal Xiang was embarrassed by the scolding. He cursed in his heart that the seminar didn't dare to provoke Mr. Bai and made him do this annoying thing. When Bai Yunj heard Bai Mingzhang's words, her gaze instantly turned cold, but she smiled casually. Principal Xiang, my grandma is soft-tempered and kind-hearted, but I hope that you will respect her opinion. I don't want anyone to use moral sense to bind an old woman in her 60s or 70s, and not let her go even after retirement. As you know, our Lin Academy has also contributed a lot. Principal Xiang was instantly rendered speechless. He also didn't expect Bai Yunj's attitude to be even more difficult to deal with than Bai Mingzhang's. I only have this one Empress Dowager in my family. If she's really coaxed by you and an accident happens, I don't know what I'll do. Bai Yunj smiled slowly, but there was no warmth in her eyes. However, even Bai Mingzhang was flustered by Bai Yunj's attitude. End of chapter. Chapter 1291. Bai Yunj's tone was cold. You're on your own. Principal Xiang still didn't know Bai Yunj's identity, but Bai Mingzhang knew it very well. If this ancestor wanted to cause trouble, it would be a large-scale disaster that made one's scalp turn numb. However, Principal Xiang felt very guilty after hearing Bai Yunj's words. He was furious and unconsciously started to add fuel to the fire. I know you're definitely unhappy, Yunj. Actually, the candidate for the seminar was someone else at the beginning. It's just that. Yunj, you know that in society, no matter where you are, there will always be unreasonable realities and dark sides. These words were obviously telling her that the original candidate had been removed because he had a backer. So it was changed to Director Lin. Hearing this, Bai Yunj snorted coldly, her eyes extremely cold. Bai Mingzhang, who was giving Principal Xiang a look that almost made his eyes cramp, was so angry that he was about to choke. If he continued to spout nonsense to Bai Yunj would probably smash their seminar tomorrow. Really? Then your seminar is quite interesting. Bai Yunj's calm words made Bai Mingzhang close his eyes unconsciously. He had already expected the tragic outcome. The people in the seminar probably didn't know that although Director Lin did not have a blood relationship, the little girl she picked up 20 years ago was famous for her bad temper in the industry. Just as expected. After Bai Yunj went out, before Bai Mingzhang could speak, she had already called Director He of the Institute. She laughed coldly, her tone filled with a chill that made even Bai Mingzhang tremble. Director He, do you know about the recent seminar in the northern part of Continent K? Director He's interest was piqued as he asked with a gossipy expression, What seminar? There's an infectious disease in the north. The seminar has changed the original candidate and asked our Director Lin to go to our nation for research. Bai Yunj licked the corner of her lips and chuckled softly. What? Do you think I'm easy to bully? Hearing this, Director He's eyelids twitched. Who the F***ck dared to think that this master was easy to bully? Yunj, maybe Director Lin is willing to do this too? Director He also remembered Director Lin's good temper and wanted to smooth things over. However, Bai Yunj sneered and said coldly, You're willing? Dean He, I don't buy the great and glorious role model crap. I don't mind standing in the front, but the people around me can't. If anything happens to our Lin Academy, don't blame me for falling out with you. After saying that, Bai Yunj's eyes flashed with hostility. Dean He shuddered and quickly remembered Bai Yunj's terrifying temper. He immediately coaxed this ancestor. I'll settle it. Yunj, don't be angry. Let's talk things over. He was really going to die. Did none of the idiots at the conference know her true identity, or did they forget her ruthless personality that could flip the heavens? Director He comforted Bai Yunj anxiously until Bai Yunj hung up the phone. However, he had mixed feelings and could not figure it out. How did Director Lin, a person with an unbelievably good temper, raise such a devil? However, after seeing this scene, Bai Mingzhang instantly understood. Indeed, Bai Yunji's irritable personality was the best at dealing with scoundrels who were full of righteousness and morality. He had argued about this 4 or 5 times, but the other party had always prevaricated. But with this person's temper, if that group of people really dared to prevaricate, Bai Yunji would probably even dare to dig up their ancestors' graves. Chapter 1292. Bai Yunji turned around and saw that Bai Mingzhang was there too. Grandpa Bai. Bai Yunji had acknowledged Bai Mingzhang's identity. Hearing that Lin Lanjuan's daughter had already acknowledged him, Bai Mingzhang's eyes were beaming. Yunji, I heard that you're at a bottleneck? Bai Yunji hummed casually and did not avoid this topic. How long has it been? Bai Mingzhang could not help asking. Bai Yunji glanced at him and thought for a moment. It's been a month. But half a month ago, I saw you publish a thesis, Bai Mingzhang said instinctively. Bai Yunji did not know how much of a sensation she caused every time she published a thesis. She said carelessly, I wrote this for fun. Bai Mingzhang still remembered his son's student. Because of the high standard and high volume of theses every week, he almost went bald while staying up late. Every day he would definitely howl 3 times. When will you be a human? Do you think you're being polite by publishing a thesis 3 days before the final exam? When can you enter the bottleneck? Every thesis was the key point of their exam and they had to memorize the thesis. Therefore, if someone asked who had been the shadow in the lives of the research students all these years, it would definitely be her. Unfortunately, these flowers of the motherland did not know that they were already at a bottleneck. However, the speed at which she published her thesis was still as fast as eating and drinking. Bai Mingzhang took a deep breath and had no choice but to face the tricks of a genius. Relax. You're still young. You'll have the ability in another 3 to 5 years. Bai Yunji's long eyelashes fluttered as she looked at Bai Mingzhang. She chuckled and raised an eyebrow slowly. I'll only give myself half a year to break through the bottleneck. Bai Mingzhang asked, so, you have a plan? Yeah, I want to get a few more awards at the beginning of the year to welcome the new year, Bai Yunji said lazily. If these words were said outside, it would be extremely arrogant. However, the person who said this was, it would be best if you can break through in half a year. Although Bai Mingzhang found it hard to believe that Bai Yunji could break through the bottleneck in half a year, he still wanted to give Bai Yunji confidence. After all, he had spent at least 2 years in his bottleneck. Meanwhile, he had just contacted the people in the seminar and tried to persuade them to change to a biologist from country R. However, he did not expect to be ridiculed. When Zhong Xinglin found out about this, he couldn't help but fly into a rage. If it weren't for Dean He stopping him, he would have scolded that group of dogs who didn't know how to back themselves up. These people always took advantage of Lin Lanjuan's good temper and tricked her into doing the project. Even after so many years of retirement, Lin Lanjun still wouldn't let her go. Old He, don't discuss this with them. Leave it to me. After Zhong Xinglin finished speaking, he called Yu Guang, the former director of the First Research Institute of the Ministry of National Defense. Old Yu, I don't know if you know about Lanjun going overseas for research. But you have to tell your students properly. If anything happens to Lanjun, see if my will let your students off. When this girl's temper flares up, it's not as simple as falling out with you. You should understand why so many famous schools and research institutes in country are willing to work with our computing institute unconditionally in the past 2 years. Isn't it because of all of them? Chapter 1293. Indeed, Yu Guang did not know about this matter. After hearing the cause and effect, he could not suppress his anger. He did not expect that group of people from the seminar to dare to do such a thing. The higher-ups also stipulated that it was best for retired or old researchers in our country to stay away from the risk zone. And this collaborative research would probably require this group of biologists to go deep into the northern part of continent K. However, with Lin Lanjuan's age and condition, it was not suitable for her to go to the northern part of continent K. It was no wonder that Bai Yunji was angry. Old Zhong, I'll settle this matter. Don't be anxious. Yu Guang sighed. However, after Lanjun, there's indeed no one who can compare to her in the biological field. It's such a pity. What's a pity? Yunji is still young. If you really think it's a pity, let her inherit her grandmother's mantle? Zhong Xinglin teased casually, but he did not expect this to come true. Come on, are you treating Yunj as 10 people? Yu Guang almost wanted to roll his eyes. It was not easy for a genius to appear in the country. He did not want Bei Yunj to collapse from exhaustion at such a young age. After the chat, Yu Guang did not look for the people from the seminar. Instead, he reported the matter directly. Just as the people from the seminar were leisurely thinking about how to persuade Lin Lanjun to complete the project for someone else, a document report was sent down. After they finished scanning the entire document, their expressions changed instantly. The higher-ups did not agree to Lin Lanjun taking on this mission and requested to change the candidate immediately. What's going on? Why are the higher-ups suddenly interfering in this matter? The expressions of the people from the seminar were ugly as they remembered that the people from the Computing Institute had come to ask them to change the candidate yesterday. Since when did the Computing Institute have so much power? They actually asked the higher-ups to change their candidate? The people from the seminar were in a difficult position. After the other candidate's family found out that the project could not be changed, they immediately rushed to the office for tea. The middle-aged woman maintained herself very well. There were only faint wrinkles at the corners of her eyes, but her gaze was sharp and she gave off an overbearing aura. President Ma, didn't we agree to let Mrs. Lin take over the project? Now that your attitude has suddenly changed, are you playing with me? Madam, how would I dare? Chairman Ma was at a loss for words. The document from the higher-ups meant that this matter was already set in stone. I've heard that Madam Lin doesn't associate with high officials and nobles, and that she's an honest and kind person. The middle-aged woman's tone was filled with sarcasm. I didn't expect her to be so capable. Madam Lin didn't say anything and you changed your mind? Chairman Ma said bitterly, Madam, this is actually an experience for He Jun. Why don't you? Before he could finish his sentence, the middle-aged woman smashed the teacup on the table, spilling the tea all over the floor. She sneered, President Ma, do you really think I'm here to drink tea with you? It was impossible for He Jun to go to such a dangerous place. I only have one son. Hearing those words, Guild Leader Ma's headache worsened. The next moment, Mother He's expression softened a little, but the coldness in her eyes remained. How about this? Ask Lin Lanjun to come over right now. I want to talk to her face to face. For a moment, Chairman Ma was even more afraid that Mother He would cause trouble. But not long after. Chairman Ma still gave Bai Mingzhang a call and briefly told him about this matter. Chapter 1294. At this moment, Bai Mingzhang was playing chess with Yu Guang. After receiving President Ma's call, he turned on the speakerphone so that Yu Guang could hear everything clearly. Professor Yu, these are all good students you've taught, Bai Mingzhang said calmly after hanging up the call. He spoke in a bureaucratic tone all day long and did not look like a researcher at all. Yu Guang did not speak, but he was disappointed. Seeing Bai Mingzhang about to get up, he could not help asking, What are you going to do? If Lanjun goes, she will definitely be bullied. It's better if I go. As soon as Bai Mingzhang finished speaking, Yu Guang rolled his eyes. Who do you think you are? You're already so old. Aren't you ashamed? What's wrong? I just like Lanjun and can't bear to see her suffer. Professor, you can't teach your students well, so do you still want to teach me now? Bai Mingzhang mocked him sarcastically. This old thing was really unreasonable. Yu Guang pressed between his eyebrows. What I mean is don't go. Since the other party is a relative, could it be that Lanjun doesn't have any relatives? Bai Mingzhang was stunned. What do you mean? If you go, Lanjun and you will be gossiped about together if word gets out. Doesn't Lanjun still have a granddaughter? Yu Guang raised an eyebrow, not caring about his student's life and death. Who dares to gossip about us? Bai Mingzhang was silent for a moment. Old Yu, is that really your student? He was too good at finding trouble for his student. That person was definitely the owner of Shiraba. We have to teach them a lesson, Yu Guang said calmly. Bai Mingzhang frowned, but he was a little worried. Yunj is a girl after all. What if she gets bullied? The corners of Yu Guang's mouth twitched. What the hell, girl? Had their research institute forgotten how many times they had gone to the police station to fish that fellow out? At this moment, the owner of Shiraba that the two of them were talking about was still drinking soy milk as he buried his head in the documents. After the call, Pei Yunj was also biting on a transparent bag as she asked in a low and muffled voice, Grandpa Bai, what happened? Bai Mingzhang told Bei Yunj about President Ma. He paused again. Since the other party is waiting, why don't I go with you? After Bei Yunj heard this, the corners of her lips, which were biting the transparent soy milk bag, curled up slightly, and there was a hint of sarcasm in her eyes. Until she lazily raised her head, her Adam's apple bobbed a few times. After she finished drinking, she squeezed the transparent bag into a ball with one hand and threw it accurately into the trash can. She said casually, "No need, I'll deal with it. Grandpa, Bai, you don't have to tell my grandma about this." Bai Mingzhang's heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't help but smile warmly. Lanjun has always been unpopular. She hasn't even seen her only son in 2 years. She probably doesn't have the fortune to meet him. However, it is her fortune to have a granddaughter like you. Bei Yunj was silent for a moment before he said slowly, "Lin Jianan didn't dare to come back because I taught him a lesson. I warned him not to come back and seek death." By Mingzhang, the atmosphere suddenly fell into silence. Just as Bai Mingzhang was on tenterhooks and was starting to panic if this ancestor would smash the door of the seminar, Bei Yunj was already walking along the long corridor. According to the office number the other party had mentioned before Bei Yunj entered, she heard a voice inside, "When will Lin Lanjun arrive? She's so arrogant that she can't even be invited, right?" Chapter 1295. Chairman Ma looked troubled. "Madam, Director Lin is old after all?" Hearing this, Mother He immediately sneered. "Chairman Ma, don't forget how you got to this position. Who are you speaking up for now?" Bei Yunj stopped in her tracks. Her eyes darkened slightly as she twirled the beautiful and special ring on her finger. "Madam He, Director Lin is indeed not suitable to go abroad." Chairman Ma's expression instantly turned ugly. Back then the He family had indeed helped Chairman Ma. Is a scientific researcher so precious? He mother was angry and disdainful. "I heard that Lin Lanjuan's son ran away, right? Since she has nothing to worry about, why would she let my son suffer like this?" Then Mother He's eyes were filled with disgust as she continued to sneer. "Lin Lanjun is just pretending to be noble. Otherwise, why would she still be entangled with Bai Mingzhang at such an old age? Isn't she ashamed at all?" When Mother He gave birth to her eldest son, she was not young, so she was the same age as Lin Lanjun. And in that generation, Lin Lanjun was the object of admiration for many scholars and young masters. Therefore, there were many older women who still looked at Lin Lanjun with the eyes of the old society. When they saw that Lin Lanjun was in dire straits and had no one to rely on, they felt that Lin Lanjun deserved it. Who asked her to be involved with so many men when she was young? The seeds of evil left in the old society harmed women and the working class. Just as Mother He was about to say something, the door was suddenly kicked open. Mother He and Chairman Ma were startled. However, when they turned their heads, they did not expect that the person who walked in was a beautiful girl. However, the cold aura around her made people feel cold from the bottom of their hearts. "Who are you?" Mother He had not recovered yet and her voice was a little shrill. "Aren't you looking for Lin Lanjun?" Pei Yunj glanced at them slowly. "I'm her granddaughter. You can tell me if you have anything to say." Mother He did not know where Lin Lanjuan's granddaughter came from, but Chairman Ma suddenly remembered that this should be the daughter of the Qin family. However, even the Qin family could not easily offend a powerful family like the He family, right? Mother He didn't care about Bei Yunj's background. She sneered, "Tell you? Lin Lanjun hasn't even left the country yet, and she's already pretending that her leg isn't working?" He made it sound as if Lin Lanjuan's decision to leave the country was already set in stone. Bei Yunj glanced at her, her beautiful red lips spitting out extremely calm and infuriating words. "Since Madam is here, could it be that your son isn't pretending to be dead but is really dead?" Even President Ma was scared witless when he heard this. She couldn't believe that the person in front of her was Principal Lin's daughter. As expected, Mother He's expression changed. She was instantly flustered and exasperated. "You." She took a deep breath, then pointed at Bei Yunj and sneered, "Well, I didn't expect Lin Lanjun to be so powerful. Raising such a sharp-tongued granddaughter." Bei Yunj slowly peeled the soft candy in her hand and laughed lazily. "What's wrong? Your son is lying down. Can't he open his mouth?" Chairman Ma's eyelids twitched violently. In this extremely oppressive atmosphere, he didn't even dare to breathe. Why was Principal Lin's granddaughter so different from Principal Lin herself? Seeing that Mother He's face was ashen and trembling with anger, Chairman Ma knew that this matter was getting more difficult. Principal Lin was probably going to get into trouble. Chapter 1296. Mother. He gritted her teeth. How dare you talk to me like that? Do you know what happens to people who talk to me like that? Bei Yunj took off her black baseball cap and ran her fingers through her hair. Then she casually sat on the sofa. She had an aura that couldn't be ignored. It wasn't something a person of her age should possess. Madam, I didn't come here today to listen to you get angry. Bei Yunj leaned back lazily. Her fingertips gently touched her temples as she played with her cell phone. Tell me, madam. Why are you looking for Director Lin? Can you replace Lin Lanjun? What right do you have to negotiate with me? Mother. He thought this silly girl was ridiculous. Who did she think she was? She was so full of herself. You don't intend to negotiate, do you? Bei Yunj was in a good mood today. After she put down her cell phone, she smiled and asked slowly. Mother. He laughed coldly. Then she picked up the black tea on the table and took a sip. At least you know what's good for you. Just as she finished speaking, President Ma suddenly received 2 emails at almost the same time. His eyelids twitched. He had a bad feeling about this. Then President Ma opened the first email. After reading it carefully, he heaved a sigh of relief. His heart was filled with joy. Old master. He has changed the notice. The final recommendation is still Director Lin Lanjun. If it weren't for Bei Yunj, President Ma would have stood up excitedly and bowed to Mother He. Mother He was born into a prestigious family. As the only daughter who was doted on, even her husband had married into her family. Her son took her mother's surname. Naturally, she did things her own way and didn't care about others. When Mother He heard this, wrinkles appeared at the corners of her eyes. She turned her head and said, Little girl, did you hear that? You should let your grandmother prepare to go abroad as soon as possible. This can be considered as doing a good deed for the country and its people. Bei Yunj only looked up at Mother He. However, President Ma was extremely afraid of Bei Yunj's mouth. He immediately interrupted her and said coldly, Miss Pei, you don't know how difficult this opportunity is for others. Some people want to go but don't have the right. Finally, the person on the sofa laughed and said unhurriedly, You're right. When Chairman Ma heard this, before he could catch his breath, he heard Bei Yunj continue, So, I've just sent a resume to you, President Ma. I plan to work hard and fight for this spot. You. Chairman Ma's expression turned ugly. He didn't know what she was doing. At her age, she probably hadn't even finished college, right? There are strict requirements for registration. Even laboratory assistants have to have a postgraduate degree or below. Furthermore, without a national award, it will not be allowed to pass. Chairman Ma frowned. When Mother He heard this, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. He didn't know what sin Lin Lanjun had committed to raise such a crazy and stupid granddaughter. Were they treating the project as child's play? What qualifications did she have to fight for a collaboration spot in the laboratory? Bei Yunj, don't mess around, Chairman Ma said with a dark expression. Bei Yunj said unhurriedly, What? Could it be that even the position of a laboratory assistant has been decided? Chairman Ma was so angry that he sneered. Miss Pei, you're so young. Don't be so arrogant. What capabilities do you think you have? As Chairman Ma spoke, he clicked on the resume. However, his voice suddenly stopped. Chapter 1297. Chairman Ma's sneer suddenly froze. His pupils constricted and he stared blankly at the words on the screen. Application for collaboration, recommendation for experimental project applicant. Gender, female, age, 21, employer, Computing Institute, main achievements, Academician of Country A's Academy of Engineering, K. Azibusaka Computing Award, Farisk Mathematics Award. Chairman Ma almost threw his mouse away. He jumped up from his chair with a look of horror. What the hell was this? Chairman Ma's thoughts were in a mess. He felt that his brain wasn't enough. Was this the new scientific researcher who had to sign a confidentiality agreement when they met? Impossible. How could she only be 21 years old? Chairman Ma's face turned pale, but he suddenly understood why the higher-ups valued this person so much and even spent so much effort just to protect her safety. This was because she was really a top genius that was hard to come by in thousands of years. There aren't many prizes. There are only 2. Bei Yunj continued unhurriedly, but 2 days ago the organizer called me and nominated this year's physics award. It will be announced at the end of the year. Chairman Ma's face was slightly distorted, as if his muscles were necrotic. Physics award? So the rumors in the industry were true? She was nominated for the Norston Physics Award again? Chairman Ma suddenly came to his senses. You really are. Chairman Ma felt as if a fishbone was stuck in his throat. He didn't dare to say that name and could only stare at Bei Yunj in horror. No wonder. It turned out that the Computing Institute suddenly intervened in Lin Lanjuan's matter not because of the friendship between Zhong Xinglin and Lin Lanjun. It was because Lin Lanjun picked up the young lady and raised her. She was the future successor of the Computing Institute. What kind of good luck did Lin Lanjun have? Could it be that doing good deeds was really blessed by the heavens? If she picked up one, she wouldn't have to worry for the rest of her life. Mother, he frowned. She couldn't understand what the two of them were talking about. She sneered. Chairman Ma, although this young lady only won 2 prizes since she is filial, why don't you let her be a laboratory assistant? At most, the He family will pay for her food and accommodation expenses. Chairman Ma's eyelids twitched wildly. Only 2 awards? Regardless of which award it was, the He family might not be able to win one even if they were counted for 180 generations. Also, would it be the He family's turn to take care of the food? If they were in a foreign country, the food that could be delivered to them would have to go through more than 10 layers of safety checks. After all, this was someone who could only see him after signing a confidentiality agreement. Whenever they felt uncomfortable, the higher-ups would probably hold a meeting and carefully select the best doctors in the country to treat them. An outstanding soldier could intimidate the surrounding countries that were ready to make a move and protect their borders. And a super scientific genius could change the fate of a country. However, in the past few years, the number of talents in the country had been increasing rapidly, and many of them had been poached by the neighboring countries. Everyone had been trying to figure out that for a genius of this level to stay in the country, the higher-ups must have paid a hefty price. Chairman Ma was instantly terrified. If he were to risk his life to become a laboratory assistant who was infected with the virus, the higher-ups would probably fly over in a plane and smash his head into the ground. Let the water in his brain be used to water the flower buds of his motherland. Chapter 1298. Chairman Ma's face turned pale, and he could only force an ugly smile. What? Miss Pei, you must be joking with me. Bei Yunj glanced at him and said calmly, Why would I? I also want to do something good for the country and the people before I die. Chairman Ma's heart turned cold. It was over. She had him in her sights. Miss Pei, you're still young. No matter who you ask, you can't take this risk. Chairman Ma broke out in a cold sweat. He was so frightened by Bei Yunj that he was about to cry. He didn't expect that helping the He family would provoke a terrifying existence that he couldn't afford to offend. Ma, what do you mean? Mother, he immediately turned hostile and stood up. Are you saying that this young girl's life is more valuable than my son's? Chairman Ma's lips moved, but he couldn't say a word. He couldn't afford to offend the He family, but he couldn't afford to offend this young ancestor either. What was he, June? He was just better at reincarnating than others. However, for a super genius like him to be born in country A, to a certain extent, it was a blessing from the heavens. Mrs. He, I'm doing this for the good of the He family. Chairman Ma's expression turned ugly, and he could only hint to Mother He not to go crazy at this time. Oh, Chairman Ma, you're making decisions for the He family? An old and solemn voice suddenly sounded from outside the door. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows and turned to look. It was a white-haired old man. Mother He walked over happily. Dad, why are you here? I'm just afraid that you won't abide by the rules and make things difficult for Chairman Ma. Elder He had lived for decades more than others, so his words were hard to find fault with. He was authoritative and confident. However, he changed the topic and looked at Chairman Ma calmly. I'll also see how Chairman Ma will personally issue orders. Chairman Ma's face turned pale instantly. How could he dare to issue such an order? He didn't dare to offend Elder He, and even more so. Just as Chairman Ma was in a dilemma, Mother He sneered. How can Chairman Ma issue orders? In Chairman Ma's eyes, Lin Lanjuan's granddaughter's life is more important than Ah Jun's. Lin Lanjuan's granddaughter? Only then did old He look at Bei Yunj with a hint of surprise in his eyes. He did not expect that Lin Lanjun could raise such an extraordinary granddaughter. But soon old He also smiled. Little girl, are you here to reject President Ma on behalf of your grandmother? No, I'm here to apply for the position of a lab assistant, Bei Yunj said slowly. Little girl, acting shamelessly is useful at home, but no one will care about you outside. Do you think your life is valuable? Old He smile didn't reach his eyes. Instead, he snorted in anger, appearing especially contemptuous. You're just in your early 20s, right? He should also understand how to lower his head to reality. As the only successor of the He family, his life is destined to be more important than the others. Then old master He glanced at Bei Yunj and said, "You'd better persuade your grandma. As long as she agrees, I can fulfill any of her requests." Before Chairman Ma could speak, old He ordered, "Chairman Ma, aren't you going to release the document?" This isn't." Chairman Ma was instantly forced into a dilemma. His expression was extremely ugly. "Oh, what a rare guest. I didn't expect old He to be here too." The voice of Bei Yunj's old acquaintance sounded from outside the door. Chapter 1299. Bei Yunj glanced at Yu Guang indifferently and continued to play with her phone. Yu Guang looked at the person sitting on the sofa. Bei Yunj was indeed angry when it came to Lin Lanjun. She even started to pretend that she didn't know him. "Professor Yu." Even Mother He greeted Yu Guang politely when she saw him. After all, although Yu Guang was only a professor now, he had made a lot of contributions and was one of the most important people in the scientific research field. He was also the closest to the higher-ups. "Isn't this old Yu? Why do you have time to come here?" Old He laughed heartily and spoke to Yu Guang in a pleasing manner. Chairman Ma saw these big shots and wanted to hide in a corner, not daring to speak. But the next moment, Yu Guang smiled faintly and said, "Isn't this about the infectious disease in the north of continent K?" Yu Guang couldn't help but say, "Bei Yunj, don't you have any manners now?" "Who knew?" Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows and said perfunctorily, "Hello, Professor Yu. Do you want me to pour you a cup of tea?" Yu Guang was speechless. How did this last develop such a temper? Old He's smile froze. He didn't expect that there would be a junior who dared to treat Yu Guang with such an attitude. What was even more unexpected was that Yu Guang wasn't angry at all and was even friendly. "Fine, you see, I won't complain to your grandmother." Yu Guang suddenly lost his cold appearance and became an unreasonable old man. Bei Yunj was speechless. "Okay, let's deal with the matter first." Yu Guang had just received a call from the higher-ups. When he found out that Bei Yunj had applied for the virus laboratory, he immediately called Bai Mingzhang to understand the situation. After that, he rushed here without stopping to rest. The higher-ups said that no matter what, they couldn't let anything happen. "Old He, Chairman Ma, let's have a meeting together." Yu Guang glanced at Mother He. Unrelated people can leave first. Mother He didn't look too good, but after glancing at Old He, she still left in her high heels. But just as Yu Guang was about to speak, he saw Bei Yunj walking towards the door as well. "Bei Yunj, where are you going?" Yu Guang was furious. Bei Yunj turned around and replied perfunctorily. She leaned against the wall and tilted her head with a smile. "I'm going home to hide my grandma." Yu Guang's eyelids jumped. He didn't care about this Pei's perfunctory words. "Stay here. Let's have a meeting later." Elder He couldn't help but frown. He didn't understand Yu Guang's intentions. What right did this little girl have to attend a meeting with them? Seminar. 20 people sat around a long table. When everyone saw Yu Guang sitting on the left side of the main seat, they couldn't help but be puzzled. Could it be that this seat was reserved for Elder He? After all, Chairman Ma wasn't qualified to sit above Yu Guang. But even if it was Old He, it didn't make sense. Everyone's thoughts ran wild, but after Old He arrived. When Old He saw Yu Guang sitting on the main seat, he was stunned for a moment. But he knew in his heart that this seat was definitely not reserved for him. So he walked to Yu Guang's side and sat on the second seat on the left side of the main seat. 3 minutes later, almost everyone had arrived. Just as everyone was waiting to see who would sit on the main seat, the door was suddenly pushed open. From outside the door, an extremely young and beautiful girl walked in. She casually glanced at everyone and naturally walked to the main seat and sat down. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.